The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stine's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, living dead and undead. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas. I'm joined by my good buddies Bjorn Palanick and Nick Shaw. We are the Goosebumps Crew, and we're back to, as always, talk some Goosebumps. If this is your first time joining us here on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, I want to sincerely welcome you all. If you are or have ever been a fan of the popular Goosebumps series of books or the monster franchise those books spawned, I have a feeling this podcast is going to be right up your alley. As I always say, me, Bjorn, and Nick are some of the biggest Goosebumps nerds on the entire planet. We can talk about Goosebumps for hours on end, and that is exactly what we do here on this podcast. Every week we got a brand new episode talking about everything Goosebumps, whether it be the books, TV shows, movies, video games, merchandise, whatever it is. If it has Goosebumps in the name, we're going to talk about it so much that you are going to be sick of the word Goosebumps by the time we're done talking about it. So with all that said, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that bell notification to get updates when new episodes go up every Wednesday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you're dying, however, to get those episodes early, you can catch the audio-only versions on our audio platforms. We're available on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, just to name a few, or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow the Goosebumps Crew on social media. We're available on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Saucy Fan and Shawn, respectively, on their social medias and their YouTubes. All those links are in the description below, so check them out. Join the Goosebumps Crew today. Become a crew member. We appreciate you in advance for your support. Also want to welcome back our very good friend, Mr. Tyler Young, 90sKidsThrowbacks. Very good friend of ours. Tyler, great to have you back.
What's up, man? Thanks.
Yep, not much, man. We're glad to have you. And this week on the podcast, we are talking about something that's truly terrifying, and that's controversy. Everybody loves controversy. Controversy is rampant in our very society, and Goosebumps, unfortunately, was no exception. Now, as you guys have known, if you've watched or listened to the podcast before, we did an episode talking about the Lost Goosebumps books, but more specifically to this topic, R.L. Stine's fallout with Scholastic. So basically, there was a period in the late 90s where R.L. Stine was having a fallout with the company Scholastic. There was a big legal battle between Scholastic and Parachute Press over the rights of Goosebumps, plus accusations of ghostwriters, this whole thing. We talked more about it in that episode. But there was another thing going on around that time, and, you know, parents, we love our parents, right? You know, parents always try to do the right thing for us. They try to put us on a good path, but sometimes parents get a little too overprotective. And as I said, you know, sometimes that can lead to controversy. You know, parents are always going after things that they think are going to corrupt the youth. You know, like whether just any popular thing really, you know, going all the way back to the 50s when EC Comics was under the scrutiny of parents, or, you know, 80s cartoons for violence, stuff like, you know, Pokemon was under scrutiny for a while, you know, a lot of anime, but Goosebumps was also under scrutiny, and it was under scrutiny for, get this, being too scary for kids. Go figure, the series for kids that's said to be scary was said to be too scary for kids. So there's a lot of parents who were saying that it was going to corrupt the children, it was going to scare them too much, or it was going to, you know, lead them down demonic roads in some way. So it was a whole witch hunt, and, you know, fortunately it did not end up working out for them, because Goosebumps is still very much popular today, and parents can't do anything to stop it, especially back then. And we're going to learn just why today, because we're going to take a look at some of the arguments that were made back in the late 90s by these parents and the people who were defending the Goosebumps books. So we got a few articles and one big video to watch. But before we get into all that, I want to know your guys' initial thoughts. Why would you think that banning Goosebumps books is a bad idea altogether? Tyler, since you're our guest, why don't we start with you?
Why do I think that they were wanting to be banned?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's multiple reasons. I think that it's one of the first book series that had illustrations that were, if I compared them to like Fear Street, right? They were cartoonish, right? So, but it not in a way of animation, more of in a way of there was a realistic aspect. I think that just the variations of just crazy artwork that Tim did, I think definitely popped out. I think that was definitely noticed. Like when you pick up a Goosebumps book, the first thing you notice is that illustration. And so some of them were pretty crazy. And then beyond that, I don't know. It's hard because I'm kind of on the other side of the fence. You know what I mean? So I think I could see how I'm not a helicopter parent by any means, but I mean, I definitely try to watch, I don't like my kids watching YouTube, and it's not anything for or against it. But if I had to relay that to Goosebumps, back then there wasn't any really technology much. So I think books were kind of like a YouTube for kids today, I guess, in a way, So I think it was something that parents in that time hadn't really seen that was geared towards kids.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And Nick, you are also a parent. I'm curious on your take on the whole thing.
Again, at different strokes for different folks. I raised my kid a little differently than probably some others did, especially how they portrayed things in the 90s. Again, I've mentioned on here before, I grew up with, say, Child's Play when I was 6 years old. So, my household was vastly different than probably the normal household. Now, granted, I didn't start her off like that. I eased her into what I knew she could handle based on things. So, I mean, it's a gradual incline for her. Hocus Pocus, Halloween Town, and then jumping into a little bit more into the actual R-rated stuff and this, that, and the other. But Goosebumps being what it is, I mean, I threw her right into that. I mean, to be honest, as an adult, I'm like, this is nothing really. I mean, especially the show back then. I mean,
so cheesy.
The books very obviously changed a few things going from book to episode, but books were honestly not bad at all. I don't understand the whole butt hurt that got over back in the day, as we used to say, up your button around the corner, stick it up there. Because I don't see the problem. They just try to cancel before canceling was a thing, like it is nowadays. I mean,
and the thing is
very strange.
You guys are the demographic that you guys were kids when Goosebumps was in its prime, and conversely, when all these accusations and controversy was going on. So you guys are in a retrospective scenario where you can look back now as adults and be like, yeah, it was stupid then, it's stupid now. So
yeah, my opinion from back then is the same as today. It was stupid. Made no sense. Because as we've talked about here before, and others have mentioned even in the clip we'll probably see, because I've probably watched the same clip we're going to be showing. It got me to read. I was more definitely a movie person and a TV show person. But it was, obviously Jacobus's covers that got me into the book. And then when I read it, it got me into more of the books. I wanted to read another one. So it's a really great gateway to reading, especially when you're a horror fan anyway. So I just don't.
I'm curious.
Don't see it. Don't see why they did it.
Yeah, me neither. I'm curious as to your point now, Bjorn.
Yeah, how was that in Australia?
Well, mine
Yeah.
kind of goes off like what Tyler was saying because like the covers. Because I have a friend who I've said this before on the podcast, but I have a friend whose younger brother went to therapy because of the original Night Living Dummy cover. He hated it that much. He was terrified of it, and I think if he was scared of it, there must have been a lot of kids that were terrified of some of the books. You know, just there's just something about it. You just look at it maybe at night, and you get the willies. You know, you know how you like to scare yourself when you're a kid. I think it's just one of those scenarios, and it made me think. Well, if he went to therapy for it, if my brother hated the girl that cried monster as much as he did, you know, the episode, then obviously there was something going on that parents were seeing. Like my kid was traumatized by this, didn't like it, so they were the ones that were probably trying to ban Goosebumps.
Mhm.
The ones that had those experiences with the books or the TV show or whatever it was. They thought it was evil. Maybe they were religious. I don't know. And I thought Goosebumps was some kind of cult, you know, to get kids into all the, you know, demonic, evil witch.
Demonic.
Well, again, whenever there's a situation,
Which is really funny because like there was a thing too that I saw somewhat recently, and I can't remember what it was, but it was regarding that. Is like Stein really doesn't do witches, and he doesn't actually say the word witch in any of his books. And I'm like, you know what? That's not. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, that's true. I was like, because I was thought, man, they had to have done it with like Clarissa or, you know, Sarah Beth. But no,
there's also
there was
been,
never any like wording saying this is a witch. This is a. They really tried to avoid that.
the word witch, yes, but there are still like spells and like things like that. So and you know,
What
like,
you would
yeah,
kind of like that,
sort of
that would
like
be
the inclination of.
It could be inferred or implied, absolutely. But the fact that they didn't say that,
But I also think
it's
that
pretty crafty.
certain like overly, especially, I'm glad you brought up the religious term because I'm a religious person myself. But like, there's a lot of people for whom they wear their religion on their sleeve at all times, and I think that any little thing that steps out of the boundaries of like safe, sanitized, exactly, safe, sanitized like media
Welcome to the House of Stein.
is sort of seen as a part of the occult. So, and especially when it comes to children, there are just some parents out there who are very much like helicopter parents who, you know, kind of want to shield their children. But as we've always said, Goosebumps was the thing that introduced kids to horror, but it was also something that introduced them to the real world. Like a lot of the themes in the Goosebumps books are fantastical, but they're also very rooted in the sort of issues and dilemmas that kids go through in real life. And in a way, it's very empowering because it's kids going up against these evil forces to win the day. So it's those sorts of things that really sort of falls flat on that argument. That they're sort of like just evil, no good. They're going to corrupt. There's always the thing that's going to corrupt the youth, whether it's TV or video games or the internet or social media, public school. Yeah. There's always just something that's going to be, you know, the thing that destroys our children, and it never is. And the 90s was full of that. You know, you have your Bart Simpson and Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy and Daria, like all these things.
God, Ren and Stimpy.
Corrupt.
That was prime.
Ren and Stimpy might have corrupted some youth.
my parents watching like
That's a prime example.
Yeah.
Like
But,
South Park, none of that. My parents.
South
didn't
Park,
really-
yeah, no, South Park was another thing. It was like there was those things that like parents just were so heavily scrutinizing because they were going to destroy the youth of America. You know, again, going back to the first example I gave of EC Comics and Tales from the Crypt back in the 1950s, like there was a whole Senate hearing about banning horror comics, and there was even like organized comic book burnings. Like that's how serious it was taken by those people. So,
Nazis.
yeah. But that's the thing. So, as I said, a lot of this took place in the late 90s. Around 1997 was when it really heated up due to a few isolated incidents, a few school districts mostly that were brought under fire to ban them from their school libraries. I do have, as I said, a few articles pulled up that I'm going to quickly share. This first article we have here was courtesy of CNN. It was on January 24th, 1997. So I'm going to read off from the article here. It says, Parents are usually overjoyed to find their children picking up a book from the library shelf, but with titles like Say Cheese and Die and Piano Lessons Can Be Murder, R.L. Stine's Goosebumps books are not necessarily the kind of literature some parents want their kids bringing home. In the Minneapolis suburb of Coon Rapids, Minnesota, parents are trying to persuade the school board to ban the Goosebumps series from one elementary school library. I'm simply exercising my right as a parent to challenge the media center on the selection of these books, says one parent. There is enough violence in our society. We do not need to offer even more in our grade school libraries, says another. There's no question children are hooked. I'd say I'd die without them, and like they're a really good series, says one child. Before he discovered the Goosebumps books, he mostly read just for school book reports, and I had to force him to do that, agrees his mother. Educators believe the books are useful. The books may not be great literature, but many educators believe if monsters and scary stories enhance reading skills, they serve a valuable purpose. We want them in the library, says Sharon Ball, a children's librarian in Villa Park, Illinois. If they can't get their books, they won't come in. Goosebumps is in good company when it comes to the kind of books people try to ban. Others have included Huckleberry Finn, Catcher in the Rye, and Canterbury Tales. Many of the materials that are still being challenged are the materials that we would want our children to read, says Judith Krug of the Office of Intellectual Freedom. One boy says that reading the Goosebumps series led to a passion for the written word. They helped me become a fluent reader, and now reading is one of my favorite things to do. Stein's stories are filled with suspense and intrigue, and some find the series not too far from Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boy mysteries. A recent survey of Illinois children's librarians suggests series books such as Goosebumps get kids on the road to reading. It doesn't matter what you read, it's your personal taste, says Julie Brady of the Bentonville, Illinois Public Library. And the same kids who are reading Goosebumps are many times reading award-winning novels. The Anoka Hennepin Independent School District will get a better read on whether the Goosebumps series stays on the shelves next week when the issues go before the school board. So this is one of the shorter articles, but it basically gets to the main point, is that some parents are saying that it's going to promote violence in society, which is a ridiculous statement. It really is. I feel
Because they've never read a single book.
well, definitely. Well, they even brought up like Goosebumps is basically the same thing as like Huckleberry Finn and Catcher in the Rye, like these classic stories that are being, scrutinized for just existing. It really is that. And I feel like one thing we'll definitely get into when we watch the actual recording from the Anoka Hennepin School District is that I feel like some parents don't understand that children are smarter than we give them credit for. Children are not going to be persuaded to violence because they read a book. Yeah. Because they read a book with a ghost or a monster in it does not mean they're going to go, rob a bank or like hold people hostage or something like that. I feel like that's doing a huge disservice.
Stein made me do it.
Think about kids. Yeah.
Stein made me do it.
Stein made me do it. He put those images in my brain. It's ridiculous.
It's like they say Goosebumps was a gateway, to like horror, gateway drug to horror. It was also a gateway to just reading. Like kids were reading because of Goosebumps, and then they read other things, So
I know, and I can attest to that. So, I have difficulties reading even now as an adult, and Goosebumps was truly the first book series I ever picked up when I was in the third grade, and actually comprehended and was interested enough to keep me reading. And so, if it wasn't for Goosebumps, I wouldn't probably be the reader I became to be. So,
exactly.
And not only reading but writing. Like people, many people who wanted to write, their own stories because of Goosebumps. So it's like if it's, obviously it's not having the sort of effect that they're claiming it's having. Actually, it's having a very beneficial effect on children. So I don't know. It's a very ridiculous statement to say that a book series intended for children is going to turn them to violence. Again, it's going back to stuff like how they were GTA is going to make people want to go out and shoot people.
I mean, when I was playing Andreas, I used to just put the weapon cheats on and just start killing everybody. So I don't know.
It's a video game. It's not real. There's a difference between reality and a video game. And I feel like kids are smart enough to know, honestly, if the parents are so concerned, they need to just teach children right from wrong. It's not about banning things that are harmless. It's about teaching your children to do right in the world.
Right. I mean, that goes right back to what I said earlier. It's all dependent on your household, how you raise your children, and, you know, what you think they can handle at the time. If you don't think your kid could read, say, this book at the time, don't let them read it.
Yep.
You know, if they're just big scaredy cats, you know, and you know it, don't let them read it. It's fine.
And as a parent,
my daughter's a straight A student, right? She definitely doesn't get that from me. You know, to quote Turk from Scrubs, you know, my girlfriend wasn't the only one with 34 C's, if you know what I'm saying. So I don't know where she gets her smarts from, probably her mom, but like she hates reading though. That's the crazy part. But she's book smart. She's definitely not street smart. And that's what's hilarious about the whole situation. So again, this goes to how you're raised in a household. So, I mean, it just baffles me. It really does. And I love how they have the commentary up top in this article too, that says it's not great literature. But so basically they're like, this sucks, but these books may not be great literature, but many educators, well, it's apparently good enough literature to be the #1 best-selling book series in the world up until Harry Potter.
Well, that's the thing.
Just saying.
All these parents are obviously still set in their ways, but they still manage to be like, it doesn't matter. Kids are going to want to read these books regardless. Like, you're not going to stop them. I'm kind of surprised that they only went for like the school level and didn't try to like outright cancel R.L. Stine himself. Like go to his place of work or his apartment or something and just start rioting.
Well, if this was in today's world and this happened, they probably would have. But given the time that this was all happening and everything, they didn't really have that as an option, I guess.
Yeah. So next up, we got another article.
You know, you say that, it's funny because you speak to any person, like any librarian or someone that owns a bookshop, and they'll tell you the same thing about Harry Potter. It's not good literature. The world that J.K. Rowling created is phenomenal, but they aren't great literature. Like, they're not written very
say
well.
that Harry Potter is satanic too because it deals with wizards and, you know, spells and whatnot.
Werewolves and
Witches and
dementors
wizards and evil wizards and witches and
Newsflash,
Literally,
ladies and gentlemen, there's evil things in the world.
big serpents and snakes, but it's funny how like the two biggest selling book series in the world are considered to be like terrible literature, but the worlds and the characters that these authors created are what makes them amazing.
The bigger they are, the bigger targets they are, I'm afraid. So
yeah, true story.
Oh yeah.
So I have another article right here. This one's from Biz Journals, and it was on February 9th, 1997. So this was not too far after the first article. A little longer one, so let's get into it. If you build a successful Goosebumps series, they will come. It's just the way business is. Whether or not to ban the Goosebumps books from the Anoka Hennepin School District isn't the decision of one woman or a school board. The decision has already been made by the fact that 160 million Goosebumps books have been rung up at the cash register since 1992. Kids and adults have been voting with their allowances and paychecks, and they continue to cast favorable ballots with their steady purchase of 4 million books each month. People buy what they like, and if they don't like something, they don't buy again. That's just the way business is. It doesn't matter if the books are removed from the library or not. Kids will just get their Goosebumps at Barnes & Noble. So if the Blaine woman realizes that she can't change the world by banning a few books, her point must be to make her opinion heard. And this is it. She believes Goosebumps are too scary and kids will have nightmares if they read them. But too scary for whom? What kids are we talking about? This is probably the most true part of this whole article. Is a story about a scarecrow chasing a kid in a cornfield scarier than a drive-by shooting in front of his house? Is a story about a little girl who wants to turn into a comic book villain going to damage a kid's psyche more than watching graphic news video of pins being gouged into a Marine cadet's bloody chest? Jesus Christ. R.L. Stine, the author of the series, has said that the Goosebumps books provide safe scares and an entertaining escape from the frightening world kids really have to live in. The books are fantasies with predictable endings. Kids know things are going to turn out okay before they begin reading. But the Blaine argument is that Goosebumps books are actually harmful. In a business, if a product proves to be harmful to those who use it, It's often recalled by the manufacturer. But so far, no one has reported that the Goosebumps books eat kids' hair, and no one has suffocated after getting their head caught between the pages. If the scary parts are too unpleasant or give your kids nightmares, just don't buy the books. Tell your kid not to check them out of the library. They're not on a required reading list, so just avoid them, like spicy food that doesn't agree with you. It's pretty simple. The reason for keeping the books around, other than the obvious argument that we shouldn't ban books, is that their phenomenal popularity and enormous sales can't be ignored. They're doing something right. The light horror genre is hit with kids and getting them to read. The Goosebumps craze started with the books, and despite all the ancillary Goosebumps products on the shelves, books are the core product and they dominate sales. The books are not video games, they're not cartoons, they're not sitcoms. The books have to be read. So this phenomenon, the Goosebumps craze, is a big motivator for kids who are reluctant or poor readers, and they are a lot of struggling readers these days for many reasons, including the reading program fad, which abandoned rote learning in favor of creative learning. As a result, thousands of kids are in various stages of illiteracy. Last year, only 41% of students in the urban metro area schools passed the basic standards reading test.
So I'm going to pause real quick. So do you guys remember, and I don't know why this just popped in my head as you were reading this, but it made me think, I was like, they had such a big problem with this, but didn't one kid dress up when they had like dress up as your favorite author or something, and he dressed up, or favorite character from a book, that's why it was, because he dressed up as like the dude from 50 Shades of Grey. This is a kid who's like 8-9 years old or something. And that's not an issue, but Goosebumps is. It's like, how did this kid like even get a hold of this book? His parent had to give it to him, right? Or was it in the school library?
Yeah,
so lots of problems with that.
You just know this kid has a basement.
I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but that just
this kid is grown up now with a basement full of toys. Like you
book, yeah. No, I can attest to that for sure too, because like, so up here in Washington State, at least where I'm in the city, my kids, so they have intermediate school and middle school together. So you have 5th grade through 8th grade, right? So I've been to their library, and it's exactly what you're talking about. Is there are 50 Shades of Grey, there are big boy books in there. And there's 5th graders in there, like reading a lot of this stuff. And, it's crazy to me that they don't have 2 separate libraries for the age differences, and it really kind of baffles me, and as a parent, like, again, and I'm kind of like with Nick on that, where I let my kids do their thing, and mature as they are. And I just teach them good morals. But there is a little bit of a line, I feel like. Obviously I don't want my 10-year-old reading 50 Shades of Grey. That's not really something I want him to be exposed to. Yeah. But, like Goosebumps, some fictional story about monsters that he can relate to. I don't see how that's, comparable to some of the things these people put in these articles of, like, it's just funny. It's really silly.
Yeah. Well, I love the bluntness of this writer. Connie Kingray is the author of this particular article, and I just love the bluntness so far of just like, is there really like anything worse than Goosebumps? Like, we talk about, they gave those horrific examples, and it's like, yeah, there's real life violence in our world that is way worse than the stuff in a Goosebumps book. And again, it even said the thing that, you had talked about, Tyler. It's just that, there needs to be a push to want to read. Like, we need to let kids just read at their own pace, because, by blocking off all these series, some of which are very interesting to kids, you're barring them from improving in their literacy skills, and that's a bad thing. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, maybe some kids are scared of Goosebumps. That's totally that's unbelievably plausible. But your kid is not this other kid. Like, if you're scared of them, that doesn't mean that every other kid deserves to have that taken away from them. That's not fair to everyone else.
Well, and even to add like to the TV show on top of that, like obviously looking back for all of us, I'm sure we all realize it's pretty cheesy, but if you relate that to like Are You Afraid of the Dark, which I feel like was 5 times as scary as Goosebumps, and that was on national TV every single day for probably 5-6 years. So, and of course most parents didn't have a problem with that. Because it's on TV, it's regulated. Oh, it's so I guess to me it's just crazy that all this, it's just silly.
Yep.
It is, and that's what gets me too. And it made me think when you when you talked about separating the libraries, it makes me think of like a video store of having its adult films back here, having its the safe stuff out here.
Exactly.
I guess you're going to have a library the same way. Just to here's all the X-rated library stuff back here. And
there are things that you should keep your kids from watching, like extreme violent, I know, Nick, you always talk about how you grew up watching Child's Play, and to each their own, but like at the end of the day, violent, like actually violent movies, or like sexually explicit books, or movies like that, kids shouldn't be watching that stuff. But something that is very clearly intended for children, obviously, number one, it's written with the intention of children reading it. And number two, it goes through editors. So it's not like they're just throwing these out all willy-nilly. Obviously, there's like censors to make sure it doesn't go too far. So if they're out there in the world, then that's it's appropriate. So I don't know. It's a very silly argument altogether, but I'm going to continue on the article here.
No watching Terrifier 3 until you're at least 10.
Yeah, that's probably a good example of that.
That's the crazy part too. Now, like, while I mentioned Child's Play, I think, was it you, Isaiah, or was it somebody else? Somebody had told me there was a child that got brought to Terrifier 2 or 3 when they went to go see it. This kid was in there.
I told that story, but I know I heard it somewhere before.
Yeah, gosh, and I thought it was you, but maybe it wasn't. But somebody had told me, I swear, that like this person brought in like 2 or 3 like 10-year-olds or something or under, like, and I'm like, to Terrifier? Not even the first one. It was the second or third one. I'm
like, you could have brought them.
That one's bad enough too. Don't get me wrong.
Horror movies, that's fine.
It's not like Scream. Like, there are levels to horror. Well, I mean, my daughter, like, I would not subject her to Terrifier simply because that type of horror is extreme, and it takes a type. Only to find out that because she's a teenager, of course, she had watched it with her friends anyway, and I didn't know this. But I'm like, I'm not going to watch it with you. I mean, just saying,
Yeah,
it's weird. It's weird for a lot of reasons. But on Scream or whatever else, sure. But
literally, like, Terrifier 3 was the first film I've ever seen that made me sick because I saw it in the theater. But it was only one scene. Like, there was one particular scene that was just like, this is the most disgusting thing I think I've ever seen. And being a guy, so to the guys here that have seen the movie, well, they think they'll know the scene I'm talking about because I was like, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, like you have levels of horror, as Nick was saying. Terrifier is like, yeah, imagine taking your 6-year-old to see that, and then like they want to dress up as that for Halloween. Could you imagine?
But that's a perfect example of like that. That is a situation where it's going too far. Like, that's a situation where you're like, okay, now it's time to be a parent and be like, no, you can't watch that. Something like that. So,
well, we've all messed up before, right? Like, I took my kids this like 2 years ago. It was a complete accident, but I don't know what I was thinking. But I've seen so many Marvel movies that I don't always pay attention to kind of what's going out. And we were at Wonderland one day, if any of you know what that is, big arcade place. And some of them have a movie theater. And I thought, at the time, I had a 7 and a 9-year-old. And they were with me, and I said, well, let's go see a movie. And Suicide Squad 2 had just come out. And so I bought tickets, not even thinking about it, because I was like, oh, the first one was great. It wasn't super terrible, but it had been a while to where I didn't really remember much. Go to find out, we get 2 minutes into it, and there's heads being blown off and all this stuff. And it was funny because I remember people staring at me with my kids, and I'm all happy, got popcorn, no idea what's about to happen. And yeah, about 5 minutes in, my son whispers over to me, goes, "Dad, am I supposed to be watching this?" I said, "No, son, no, we're gonna leave," and so we left. But yeah, it was just too much. But it was a mistake on my part. My wife was cracking up though. She's like, "What are you thinking?" I don't know. I guess I wasn't. I didn't.
You know what? You that's good parenting though, because you realize that and you're like, okay, maybe we should not stick around. There's some people who will like just be like, oh, we're here, whatever.
Well, and that was the thing is I truly just I didn't think about it. I didn't even, it's such an old school theater. They didn't really have much info outside of just the name of it. And so, I feel like if I would have saw the R, rated R and the Y, I would have immediately, obviously been like, yeah, it's a no-go. But the Terrifier thing too, Nick, I went through that with my daughter too. Like she wanted to watch it really, really bad with me. And I told her I wouldn't do it. And I watched it and same thing. It was pretty bad, as far as the gore and stuff. And go to find out that later that weekend she watched it with her friends. I said, that's fine. I mean, it's up to you. That's on your mind, but I'm not going to do it with you. Like that's a little much. So
right. When you have kids of a certain age, and I know these books were targeted, I would say between 8 to 11 would be probably their demographic at the time. These books were right up that alley. So that really was totally fine. I mean, they were what you would consider regulated books for their appropriate age group and everything. And
yes,
but when you get to, and I mentioned this before too, when we had some artists on here, I'm like, when you have something that's transferring from a like an imaginary, like you have to imagine it yourself, going to an actual like visual experience, like what you see can be more harmful most of the time, especially in this day and age, than what you'd actually read. Like you can read something and kind of be shocked, or you can imagine how that situation would unfold. But when you actually see it, that's a whole nother level of going to mess with your head if you're not ready for it.
Yep. Agreed.
So I'm going to continue with the article here. It says, as a result, thousands of kids are in various stages of illiteracy. Last year, only 41% of students in the urban metro area schools passed the basic standards reading test. And these are the kids we're depending on to run our corporations, keep our economy competitive, and take our country into the next century. It all boils down to business. The LA Times on October 7th, 96 said Goosebumps books aren't great literature. Even so, educators say the books have value at a time when two of five fourth graders nationwide read below grade level. I'd rather kids read good literature than less good literature, but kids aren't reading a whole lot these days, says UCLA education professor Deborah Stipik. For children, Goosebumps is more than a book, it's a status symbol. If a kid isn't into Goosebumps, he's out of it somehow, and using a Goosebumps book as a status symbol is far preferable to keeping a gun in his locker. When police officers protest about being understaffed and City Hall complains about the high cost of fighting crime, Ramsey County Sheriff Bob Fletcher offers an unusual solution: literacy. He has said that the best way to deal with a growing gang problem is to make sure kids learn to read. He has said most hardcore gang members couldn't read by the end of second grade, and that their low self-esteem pushed them into a life of violence. In the December 2nd, 1986 Publishers Weekly, Stein is given credit for his ability to snag the ever-elusive middle-grade boy reader. That's the same one Sheriff Fletcher and his team of officers are trying to save with their volunteer reading program. It's catching the problem early when treating it is less expensive. It's good business. So that's the end.
You're telling me that someone thinks Goosebumps books led to freaking school shootings, or could have been the reason for that? That's come on, like that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like just because you read a Goosebump book, like nah.
I believe that, unfortunately.
It's just way too yeah, but that just shows how crazy people are that they think that. I think that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's taking something that shouldn't have been to the extreme. That's an extreme that they're trying to use to scare. They're using it as a scare tactic to parents and stuff. That's all that really probably was.
Your kids read Goosebumps. Next thing they'll be doing is carrying a gun. Like, come on.
So
because for whatever reason they think the books advocate for violence, which they don't. And again, that goes back to what we said earlier. If the parents would have read a book, they'd see what it's about. It would have been a problem solved scenario before it got into this mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
So this article right here is the top censored stories of 1995. So there's a section here about Goosebumps from Bay County, Florida. It says the Goosebumps series of horror novels for young readers by R.L. Stine will not be removed from Bay County elementary schools. The Bay County School Board on May 2nd unanimously approved a 3-part recommendation by Superintendent Stephanie Gale and a committee convened to review the series to keep the books in school media centers, allow teachers to retain the right to choose books to read to their classes, and give parents the right to request alternate assignments. The school system can't be a parent. It's the parent who makes the difference, Gale said. We can't be all things to all people. There are things on the shelves that I don't like. I'm not thrilled with the Goosebumps series. Coordinator of Media Technology, Loretta Huggins, chaired the committee that reviewed the 43 titles in the series. While the books weren't considered high-quality literature, there's that word again, she said that they were high-interest, low-level reading books that inspired a lot of students to begin reading on a regular basis. The decision to retain the books followed emotional appeals from Kip and Lisa Clinton, a Lynn Haven couple who requested in March that the books be banned after a teacher at Highland Park Elementary School read one of them to their daughter's third-grade class. In their complaint, the Clintons specifically cite pages and passages in 5 of Stine's books: The Barking Ghost for satanic symbolism and gestures, possession and description of dogs as menacing and attacking, Night of the Living Dummy 2 for spells and chants, violence and vandalism, The Haunted Mask for a graphic description of an ugly mask, demonic possession, violence, disturbing scenes, and dialogue, The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight for satanic acts and symbolism and disturbing scenes, and Say Cheese and Die for promoting mischief, demonic possession, a reference to Satan and his goals, a disturbing scene describing a death, and a scene that tells of a child disappearing from a birthday party. They also asked that all titles in the Goosebumps series presently in print and all forthcoming be banned from all county elementary schools. This was reported on April 2nd. So I'm willing to bet by many of those accusations that this couple here was very, very religious. In almost
just based on those descriptive words they use for these particular books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, literally, it's like just demonic possession. You know, reference to Satan and his goals is probably the funniest one to me, because it's like, look, I'm a religious person too, okay? Everybody has their own beliefs and in life and whatnot, and everybody's sort of from birth given sort of that sense of right or wrong. But this is just beyond ridiculous. Like, these are children's books, guys. Like, nobody's putting the Necronomicon in the children's section at your library, okay?
Just think how many Goosebump books were probably burnt. Like, there was probably these little groups of these activists that were like putting them in a fire and just being like, "You rotten hell."
How many first edition Welcome to Dead House?
Oh God!
Yeah. God,
how many?
I might have a heart attack thinking about it.
Oh my God! Yes, back then probably was a first print of Welcome to Dead House being burnt in the fire.
But also, I have to bring, note to how up to this point we've heard the same thing, is that these committee chair members and these superintendents and these teachers are saying the same thing, that Goosebumps is not high quality literature. Who the fuck cares if it's high quality or not? Okay,
who cares, man?
Cool. We want kids to be reading freaking Shakespeare at 8 years old. That's totally reading.
Yeah, let me read A Tale of Two Cities, please.
Like, guys, we can't expect kids to immediately come out the womb reading like classical literature at all times. They're not married.
They wanted you reading liquid.
I was gonna say that's exactly the same thing too. Is like, as a person who didn't read well, any book you shoved of Mice and Men, whatever, that you shoved in front of me, little did I have of any interest, with my ADD and stuff. But also, some people, like for me, I can't read, like realistic books, right? Of like, I can do like an autobiography, but that's what Goosebumps, I feel like, did was it made it. I liked creative writing. So like for me, I know like in the third grade when we started doing like, you guys all remember doing cursive first drafts and narrative writing and creative writing days and all this shit. And you had to write a story or whatever. But I feel like Goosebumps for me really got me into that. Right. And so it's just a shame to see stuff like this and people be so close-minded and ignorant to things that they clearly just can't comprehend because, they are stuck in their own little world.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. 100%. And again, these parents, their complaint basically arose because a teacher read them to the entire class at a school. And as a result, they wanted to ban all previous and all future Goosebumps books. They wanted to take it away from every other person. And I mean, I'm sorry, but how unbelievably selfish is like just that sort of mentality is just like, okay, we don't like them, we're going to ruin it for everybody else. Like it's unfair to those who do enjoy these books and do want to read them because you're injecting your own personal beliefs on them. That's not okay. Like it's never okay to do that. If you don't want your kid reading them, then you be the parent. You
homeschool them.
Might as well homeschool them. Kids are going to read those. Kids are going to read those books.
Right.
You're not going to stop them. So you might as well just shelter your kid in a bubble for the rest of your life because, you're not really going to win in a scenario like this. And obviously in this situation, they didn't win. They kept all the books on the shelves and left it to the discretion of parents and teachers. But just the mere fact.
You gotta fight for your right to read Stein.
They need to make a cover of that.
There would have been like people with picket signs like out the front of schools, I reckon, being like, ban Goosebumps. Goosebumps are no good. Goosebumps is the devil or fucking, I don't know, something like that. And I guarantee like that would have happened a lot back then.
Goosebumps is the devil.
Yeah.
Goosebumps is the devil. Bobby Boucher.
All right. So this article right here is from 2013. So this is way after. And we'll come back to the 90s, specifically the Anoka Hennepin incident, since that was the most popular one. But we'll come back to that in a little bit. I did want to bring up two articles from very recently, however, just to sort of see how this is looked back in modern times. So this one's from pen.org on September 30th, 2013. So it says, for our second annual Banned Books Month, PEN America once again reached out to PEN members, supporters, and staff writers and editors from all genres, blah, 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 to send their reflections on the banned books that mattered most to them. And it says, fear is at the heart of Goosebumps, a series that acts in the same way that immunizations do, and it's just as mandatory for children's health. It gives them a small dose of scary and lets them produce needed antibodies towards fear book after book so that they slowly become less affected. Between 1990 and 1999, books in the Goosebumps book series made the top 20 list of most challenged books. Between 2000 and 2009, they made the top 100. The objections came from parents who felt the books were too frightening for kids and or contained satanic and occult themes. Both charges seemed rather ridiculous, with titles like Go Eat Worms, The Cuckoo Clock of Doom, and It Came From Beneath the Sink. That is not to say that frightening things don't happen in Goosebumps books. In Say Cheese and Die, children have to make an escape from a mad scientist who wants to hold them hostage so they don't spill his secrets. After they make a run for it, the main character Greg reflects on this. Forever, Greg thought Dr. Fredericks wanted to keep sharing me down in the basement forever. Now, Dr. Fredericks didn't wish to sadistically torture them or sexually assault them, the obvious place that adults' minds go when they hear that a man wants to keep a child forever.
He was thinking. He never described what he was thinking.
Yeah. He just didn't want them to blab. We know, however, that in real life the situation wouldn't be so benign. Kids know it too. They do.
Lotion on the camera.
Even if they somehow never catch a soundbite from the evening news or summary from an informed peer, children talk amongst themselves about these horrible things. They realize it's taboo, discouraged information, a subject their parents are too uncomfortable with that many wish to avoid entirely, making it all the more vital for them to depend upon one another for enlightenment. See, because kids are not stupid. Even if they're sheltered in the most comprehensive maximal way, this fact is still implicit in our warnings to them. Never talk to strangers. The obvious question in this directive is why, and children are smart enough to realize this means that some adults are a threat to their safety and well-being. This realization, however, well accepted by the child, inevitably causes fear. And how do children reconcile the terror of knowing that some adults would do awful things to them if given the chance? The challenges to Goosebumps by protective parents imply that fear is a bad thing, that the books and fear in general are not appropriate for children. Obviously, too much fear, like too much of anything, can be detrimental. But one's relationship to fear, what makes one afraid, and how one deals with being afraid is a necessary balancing skill that needs to be self-calibrated over time. Self-calibrated, excuse me. And Goosebumps help children to do that perfectly. The series never goes too heavy or serious. The child protagonists never die, and the threats are almost always supernatural events that couldn't actually happen. There is never any profane language, and children can count on and predict the plot structures in a way that is reassuring. They move through the text at their own pace. They can close the book and stop reading at any time if things begin to feel too intense for them. That's important. And since kids are usually allowed to self-select books, children who aren't ready to read them or don't want to read them likely won't. At Johnsonville Elementary in Blaine, Minnesota, one school where the books were challenged, so we already read about this, the principal defended the series by stating that while his 11-year-old son reads them furiously, his 10-year-old daughter chooses not to touch them. She knows that for her, they would not be a positive experience. Kids can choose. So I'll pause it right there for right now. That is a very important factor in how I said earlier that kids are smarter than we give them credit for. And that's because they can choose what they feel they're ready for and what they're not ready for. Me as a kid, it took me a while to get into Goosebumps. When I first discovered the books, I didn't want to read them. I thought they were going to be too scary. After a few years, I picked them up because I felt like I was ready to read them. That's just a thing that kids do. They're intelligent enough to make their own choices, and I feel like parents need to be parents, but only when they need to be the parents. You have to give your kid independence. That's the only way they're going to grow and mature into, normal adults.
Normal's a relative term.
Well,
I mean, I'm not normal to most people.
I mean,
put me in the right crowd or at a horror convention, I'm normal.
I mean, morally normal.
I have some awkward laugh. Sorry, guys.
You're good. Same cannot be said about the real world. Life can seem unkind, devastating, too painful to bear. Illness, death, disaster, cruelty, these are a cold reality no matter how much we want them not to be. Goosebumps doesn't introduce children to fear. Every child who reads his or her first Goosebumps book has already been terrified by something or someone, no matter how perfect the life they've lived. After all, fear is also a very healthy force for good that helps children accomplish goals, stay safe, and think about the consequences of decisions. I assert, the author, that the original Goosebumps series and all subsequent spin-offs are so popular, over 300 million sold, making Stein the second most best-selling children's author of all time, J.K. Rowling the first, because they respect children enough to confirm what they already know about the world. It's not always safe. That at times they will be misunderstood, that even well-intentioned adults can inevitably fail children without meaning to. In Night of the Living Dummy 2, the child protagonist Amy laments of her mother. She thinks I'm crazy, I realized. She thinks I'm totally messed up. Goosebumps affirms that bad things can happen to children by no fault of their own, and when they do, children themselves can be a powerful agent by attempting to think of the best possible solution. Even when all the options have undesirable aspects, usually in Goosebumps, the story is resolved due to the wisdom and action of the child protagonist, often working in cooperation with other children. Kids love these books because fear is diffused within their pages. It lets them ultimately cuddle up to the idea of being afraid. It is fear rendered in a gentle stuffed plushie that helps readers to be more confident the next time they're truly afraid in life. They felt the lion's breath and are now able to withstand its claws, to understand that though things seem awful at present, happier shores may eventually appear. So I actually really like this article. In fact, I think it might be my personal favorite of the ones that I've presented thus far, because it really does just show why the whole matter of banning them is detrimental to kids and why it's really not an issue to begin with, in my opinion. So this one right here, this is one last article before we move on to the video recording. This is from The Morning Call, and this was on October 4th, 2021 by The Morning Call. Pernell Parker's bedroom is jammed with the trappings of a 10-year-old boy. Wrestling trophies, football pennants, a Sony PlayStation, and white bookcase stuffed with Goosebumps books. Pernell owns like 41 of the 54 titles in the children's horror series, lined up neatly and ordered by number. The Allentown Youth...
Well, this article is already a sham.
Well,
can't take it seriously.
I don't know. The Allentown Youth has been reading Goosebumps books almost exclusively since he was in first grade. I like scary books, Pernell explained. So do Pernell's friends.
I like turtles.
Of our other elementary school children in the Lehigh Valley and around the world who devour the fast-paced books about youths and their run-ins with vampires, ghosts, and mummies as quickly as they are published. They watch Goosebumps on television, wear Goosebumps clothing, and carry Goosebumps notebooks. But many adults don't share children's romance with the popular paperbacks from Scholastic. Goosebumps author R.L. Stine may have been the nation's top-selling author for 1996, according to USA Today's best-selling books list, but his Goosebumps series was also challenged by parents more than any other book last year. So actually, this might be an article from 1997. It just might have been updated for the modern
Same one.
There were at least 20 challenges to the presence of the series in schools, more than in any year since Goosebumps first hit the shelves almost 5 years ago, according to Deborah LeBeau, Assistant Director for the Office of Intellectual Freedom, a division of the American Library Association, which monitors banned books. Some challengers have called Goosebumps books satanic, violent, and disturbing, but LaBelle said that many of the challenges are unusual in that parents just say they are bad books. LaBelle figures the parents are frustrated with the pervasiveness of the Goosebumps phenomenon. There are 180 million Goosebumps books in print. Stine pens one story a month and has a contract to do more than 100. While Scholastic reports sales have leveled off, many fans are hooked and read nothing but. On our list is The Adventures of Huck Finn and Catcher in the Rye, and nobody says they are bad books, says LaBelle. We're hearing weird rumors that R.L. Stine doesn't even write these books and that he's a child molester. People are really concerned about these particular books. One case that garnered national attention concluded last month where a suburban Minnesota school district rejected a mother's request that Goosebumps be pulled from the elementary school library. The mother said they are too frightening for children and inappropriate for schools. Her oldest daughter is a first grader. The school district concluded that the books are age appropriate, help build fluency in reading, and attract reluctant readers.
Almost got him, Diddy. Almost got him.
Yeah.
Not this time.
I just love that the idea that
your children.
Kids that parents were going so far as to call R.L. Stine a child molester because he writes scary books.
Bad boys for life.
Literally. I mean, if that's all it takes, then there's a lot of child molesters out there then. But, I also like that they also threw in the whole rumor of him not even writing his own books, so that was very much a topical issue at the time too.
Yeah.
LaBelle said all the challenges to the series concluded similarly. In the Lehigh Valley area, Goosebumps books are widely available in classrooms and school libraries. Local parents and educators interviewed usually express some dissatisfaction with Goosebumps, saying the books are hardly fine literature. There it is again. But most agreed children should be allowed to choose what they read, and in this age of video games and 100-channel television, they're thrilled to see them interested in books. The thing about Goosebumps is that
up that they like. I want to know, like, they say like these parents and educators not find books. What were they reading that they classified as fine books, I wonder? Because they only mention, like, constantly Huckleberry Finn and Catcher in the Rye, which are classics. But I don't enjoy those books either. Like, I had to read those for school. They are very droll, in my opinion. But I would love to know, what are they reading? Was it 50 Shades of Grey?
Clifford.
Is that your fine literature?
They were reading Clifford.
You're reading.
Is it, yeah. Yeah, is it Captain Underpants? Was that your fine literature? But Goosebumps
Babysitter's
isn't.
Club. Babysitter's
It's so
Club.
subjective. It's just ridiculous, and it just cracks me up that they just keep rehashing the same thing in every article.
Well, this happened.
Like-
if you just remember too, this also in the '90s. There was actually about the same time frame, and again, it's just the same kind of dilemma. It wasn't a book, but when the Nintendo 64 came out, when a GoldenEye 007 came out, it was a big deal. Like a lot of parents, like Nintendo almost got in some trouble because it was like one of the first games that was really geared towards that system, really for kids. And it was tough. And again, like you said, just the sentiment, even on the game system or Goosebumps, like. And every generation, I feel like, always has something to try to cancel. But, I mean, this stuff, it's kind of like the Satanic Panic in the 80s, It's just so silly. It's like it's just the most asinine stuff you've ever heard. You're like, I mean, how far back you are in the basement, Like, how far back are you in there, Go touch grass.
Literally, go touch grass. To continue, it says, the thing about Goosebumps is that kids are reading. They are actually reading, said Gail Chaplin, library at Central Elementary School in Allentown. If a series is going to do that for kids, that's wonderful. Said Janet Spence, librarian at DeFranco Elementary School in Bangor. My thought is a lot of kids who take these books out are kids who might not be reading. If they are reading, that's my main point. My second goal is to channel them out of that sort of book to a more challenging book or one that is considered to be better literature. I find that eventually the kids get tired of them and they're going to start looking for something else to read. I think if you tell the kid, no, you can't read that, that's sending a message. Joanne Jones, a third grade teacher at Union Terrace Elementary School in Allentown, said she would never suggest her students read Goosebumps, but she has seen inadequate readers work hard to master them. She has a lot of books in her classroom library, and students often choose them for a daily program called Reader's Workshop. I like them to have a variety of authors. However, the premise is self-selected reading. Nobody tells me what to get from Encore books when I go. Some teachers won't allow students to read only Goosebumps for formal reading assignments. Spence, for example, said she will only accept only one Goosebumps book per marking period for a program that enables children to win prizes for reading. And Goosebumps books are not available in every school library. I would prefer to spend my money on books that supplement the curriculum, explained Mara Shee, librarian at Marvine Elementary School in Bethlehem. Dr. J. Robert Dornish, elementary education professor at Kutztown University and avid collector of children's literature, believes Goosebumps are so mediocre that they would be better left out of school libraries. They're not good literature, and there's so much good literature out there, he said. I think if you put it in the library, then you are saying this is a book I endorse. The way I feel is that children who want these books will find them. Educators agree that while Goosebumps books are suspenseful and have a lot of dialogue, they tend to be formulaic with thin plots, simple characters, and an abundance of slang. But that's usually the case with book series for the mass market. I see it as when I was growing up with the Bobbsey twins, Nancy Drew, and Hardy Boys type series, said Sharon Hamilton, librarian at Cheston Elementary School in Easton. If they read these books and enjoy them, find that they like them, then maybe in a few years they will be looking for something with a little more depth to it. The popularity of Goosebumps has sparked a boom in children's horror books, among them Christopher Pike's Spooksville from Pocket Books and Dead Time Stories by A.C. Cazone from Troll Communications. It's what most kids want to read at the moment, scarier books, says Roy Wandle-Miller, publisher of Troll. But to these publishers, scary does not equal violence. They promote the books as thrillers, but without blood and gore. If anything happens, a monster chases them and there's a threat to kill someone, said Pernell Parker. Bill Wright, spokesman for Scholastic, offered the company line. The stories offer children 8 to 12 safe scares, not unlike those found in classic fairy tales and children's literature staples like the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, and Wizard of Oz. And this is how Stein explained his intentions in the live chat on America Online several years ago. I'm very careful never to make these books too real. They are supposed to be entertainment. So I'm careful to keep many real-world problems such as drug abuse or alcoholism out. I try to give readers shivers, not nightmares. But that could depend on who is reading the book. Sharon Frankenfield, a librarian at Allentown Public Library, said children in the early elementary grades often want to read Goosebumps. It's a first or second grader, I'll say, that's not for you. Brenda Ross, a librarian at George Wolfe Elementary School in Northampton, good God, there's a lot of people they interviewed, said she doesn't let children under third grade check out Goosebumps. By fifth grade, many children have outgrown Goosebumps and turned to Stein's Fear Street series, an even edgier horror thriller series published by Pocket Books. 10-year-old Katrina Krause of Allentown finds the fright factor of Goosebumps disappointing, so she's immersed in Fear Street. They're really suspenseful, she said. I've read at least 20 of them. Educators interviewed said Fear Street books are not available in their schools. Hamilton, the Cheston School librarian, wonders about all the fuss over Goosebumps when she's got children asking for books such as Silence of the Lambs and horror novels by Stephen King. I downright tell them I don't think they are suitable for elementary school children to read. And that's why they read Goosebumps. See, that's another thing. So they obviously don't want kids reading like real horror novels, but then they also bar away the ones that are meant for their age demographic. So
yeah, read Silence of the Lambs, psychological fucked up shit.
Yeah, there are, just like there's bad horror movies out there, there are, intense horror books. Fear Street is more intense than Goosebumps. But, I didn't really see people shouting to the heavens about how bad those books are.
Even if they go to the route of what you see of what they mentioned earlier, actually, is just even some classic fairy tales like Hansel and Gretel, or Rumpelstiltskin, or Jack and the Beanstalk. I mean, all of those have underlying horror tones to them to an extent. And some actually to the point of where, the witch is, baking children and eating them by luring them into her candy house. So I'm just saying,
people forget too, those old fairy tales were made as cautionary tales. They were meant to keep. So yeah, they were scary, but they were scary for a reason. They were meant to teach children, don't go into strangers' houses, don't steal, don't lie, like all those things. It was meant to teach morals. That was why they were scary. They scared the kids into doing good or doing right from wrong.
The classic human touch of teaching you through fear. Yeah. Be afraid of this person who's going to give you candy.
Yeah. So continuing.
Except on Halloween. We ignore everything on Halloween.
Yeah. Ann Cimino, associate professor in elementary education at Kutztown University, theorizes that...
Oh, here you go, Bjorn.
What was that?
Parnell's favorite is Horror Camp Jelly Jam.
Oh, yeah.
Green Ranch did their top 10 Goosebump books, and they had Horror Camp Jelly Jam as their favorite as well.
Oh, wow.
It's probably my fault. I've hyped that book up now.
I guess so.
When first asked her opinion of the book, she became alarmed after being told they have titles like Welcome to Dead House and Say Cheese and Die. After reading a few, however, she pronounced them innocent. I think the titles are somewhat gory, but the stories aren't. They're fast-moving, they're page-turners. I see why kids like them. Purnell's favorite is Horror Camp Jelly Jam. I like it because they all went to camp and played sports, and I like sports, he said. Daniel Hazer, Purnell's mother, has no problem with her son's interest in Goosebumps. At 10 years old, their minds are already thinking bigger things than you want them to, so if they pick up on this, that's fine by me. He likes to read, and that's good. And it's not as if Purnell is obsessed by the books. In fact, he says he usually only reads at night when I have nothing to do. And he has also begun to explore other authors. He recently began reading Muriel of Redwall by Brian Jacques, a 400-page novel about rats and ferrets going to war that was recommended by a teacher. A Goosebumps bookmark marks his place. So this was originally published on March 27th, 1997. So it might have been
Finding your Goosebumps.
Yeah, so that's the thing. A kid who's read Goosebumps and got interested, went on to read a 400-page novel. Like, that's got to be atonement to something. If
You feel
not,
like saying to those people that were targeting Goosebumps as activists, yeah!
goosebumping.
We're goosebumping. All the kids in like 1997, they just go up on stage when all these activists are like, you shouldn't be reading it. They're just like, no, Mom, we're goosebumping.
Oh, God. Ugh.
That was Zach.
So now we've read through those articles, and as I said, we have a video to watch. This is a recording from C-SPAN of a 1997 hearing at the Anoka Hennepin School District. So we read about them in some of the previous articles. But we're going to see firsthand the sort of arguments that were brought up. Most of these are for people who are against the ban of Goosebumps, but there are people in there who are supportive of it. So we're going to go through and hear all the different arguments. This is a condensed version, just for time's sake. I will leave a link to the full unedited recording in the description below for you guys to check out. But
Get your popcorn ready. Wait, guys, snacks. We need snacks.
Has to be the kid being there for an hour and a half.
Hearing on the challenge to the Goosebumps books. The committee would like to extend their thanks to you for coming. They are interested in hearing what you have to say, to listen to your opinions. A book in one of the libraries or another piece of media, be that a video, magazine, whatever, we have a procedure that a community member can follow to question something that we have.
Look at that hair.
In this case, the citizen did the first thing. She filled out a citizen's request for reconsideration. In this case, it was 9 Goosebumps books that were housed at Johnsville Elementary School. The school chose a building level committee which consisted of the principal, 2 teachers, the media journalists, 5 citizens, and they made a recommendation on those 9 books, and that was to retain them. The parent made the decision that she was not in agreement with the building level committee. So at this point, a district level committee has been formed, and that our committee consists of 4 citizen representatives, a media journalist, a teacher,
Classic 90s chili bowl haircut.
District level administrator.
The Goosebumps Review Committee has compiled a procedure to expedite our final hearing in an orderly and fair fashion.
Hilarious that they have to have a
Hello,
Goosebumps
my name
Review
is Barbara
Committee.
Anderson. I'm from Coon Rapids, and I have 5 children, 3 of which have gone through Anoka
in support of the
Hennepin schools, and my younger 2 are now at Meadow Creek. The last one just transferring after Christmas vacation. My concern is not banning the books, because obviously we're not in the public school anymore, but I'm just amazed and appalled that the only way it seems that the majority of you people can get your children to read books is by reading this type of garbage. And I would think with all these educators, with the guidelines that you have for choosing books, that I would think from preschool on, you could encourage the children to read better literature than this type of thing. I read this book. They're sick.
Boo, get off stage.
Like one sentence in here. The sick gagging sound made me feel like puking. These are just typical.
Where's Zach with his farts when you need him?
Books. My children don't read these books, not because I told them they couldn't read them, but because when they were given these books as a present, just the cover alone was enough to say, oh, yeah, we don't want to read that. But they've been exposed to good literature all their lives, and
We need to cut that. We need to cut that phrase out and send it to Tim.
If this is all that an Hennepin can offer
Yes.
to get children to read, I think it's pretty sad. My name is Cheryl Dankins. I'm the reigning Mrs. Minnesota, America. I speak at elementary schools all over the state, encouraging children that true beauty starts in their heart. I believe the Goosebumps series should be taken out of the district's public schools. This discussion isn't about taking away rights to read Goosebumps. Any parent can bring these books home to their children to read either from a public library, from a local bookstore, or a department store. This discussion is about censorship. School libraries must choose which books adorn their limited shelf space. Mrs. Byron has simply asked that this limited space be used for books that are more productive. Elmer Anderson, ABC Newspapers. Reading stimulates the mind, and the reader is called upon to create his or her own mental images stimulated by the words. Exactly. Catherine Kirsten.
I wonder if Stein actually watched
this. The first book opens with a tour through a medieval torture chamber, including repeated invitations to imagine victims' pain and anguish as they wait death.
He's just too busy.
Grandparents metamorphosed
too busy being Scrooge McDuck
threatening to attack
swimming in his money.
Their granddaughter. Should our children's minds be stimulated with images of death and violence? Should our children be desensitized to violence despite the district's no violence policy? American Psychological Association report 1992. The accumulated research clearly demonstrates a connection between viewing violence and aggressive behavior. Principal Barb Winfield, 1993. Something is happening to students that is causing them to act different from the way they did 5 or 6 years ago. She believes a large part of the problem traces to the unhealthy role models that the media seems to celebrate. Vincent Pirananzu, 1993. I see an increasing tolerance of violence among youth. They see it as normal. I see it as frightening. From an early age, children are conditioned to violence. Saturday morning cartoons, for just one example, show violent action as fun and amusing. Our children are a product of what they see, what they hear, what they imagine. Garbage in, garbage out. They act according to how they see the world. We wage campaigns to stop the violence. In fact, the district paid a lot of money and attention to search institutes.
Like, I don't know, if I were
40 developmental assets.
Kind of stuff
17 at least out of the 40 assets are not promoted by the content of the Goosebumps book. In my comments that I pass out to you, I list those 17.
I'd be that kid in the far back that was like asleep.
Assets, look realistically as to whether or not the Goosebumps series promotes them too. If it does promote them, fine, keep the books. If the books don't promote these district-accepted non-violent assets, then make a tough choice in favor of the children's futures. It's more than a choice, it's your obligation.
I'll give you violence.
What child will be home if she can't check out a Goosebumps book at Johnsville School? But look at how many children might be irreparably harmed by reading about torture and death. Being a parent or educator means making tough choices. We curb our children's appetites for swearing, sex, alcohol, drugs, and violence. We must be consistent in telling our children that violence cannot be tolerated in any form. My finishing paragraph. Can I finish?
Loads of sex and alcohol.
Sure, thank you.
That's why
Books
I read
that leave children victimized, afraid, or reinforce violent attitudes aren't appropriate.
Remember that time when Carl, Beth, and Sabrina choked up in the cemetery with Chuck and Steve?
Much better served. The district adopted a no violence policy, and we need to enforce it.
Part in the
Final
book.
comment from again Catherine Kirsten. Our children are caught up in the downward spiral of an ever more debased popular culture. No harm done, we tell ourselves. We're just letting them choose for themselves. This consoling thought lets us off the hook, making it easy to abdicate our responsibility as parents and educators. I'm afraid, however, that it is wishful thinking. Shock fiction for grade schoolers comes with a price. And
how much time has this lady got up here?
I'm speaking tonight as a concerned parent and a former teacher and a parent in District 11. I feel this issue has been turned into an issue of book banning and censorship, while it in fact began as a challenge to a school and then the district about the district's selection policy on literature.
Who ban books?
That is, we place our district in our district school
probably why she's
libraries.
A former teacher.
As we find much of that criteria, as stated by the district,
she wasn't very good
regarding Goosebumps books or what has been labeled as shock fiction. I challenge that criteria on usefulness of its content in Goosebumps, the appropriateness of content for students regarding age, or the artistic quality of Goosebumps. As it is, our libraries are on a tight budget and have a limited space as to what books are placed on our school shelves. Do we call that censorship? No. I believe these books are not appropriate at the elementary level. And I would also like to address the issue that some of the parents who support Goosebumps, do you also support the attack of a parent who has brought this issue up? Or
Why does she sound like she's about to cry?
With threatening phone calls,
It probably is going to.
harassing, and also a bomb threat on her home. Instead of edifying
guessing,
and
like,
lifting up an
maybe
author
she was threatened.
who is shocking and grabbing our
Just for bringing up the
children's
issue, I don't
minds
know.
to
The
this
initial
next
person who brought it
level
up, but they
of
said
shock
that there was like
fiction.
threatening phone
It is
calls and a
time
bomb
for
threat.
parents and
That's never okay.
educators
Like,
to
you know, we
just
can
say
pound on these people all we
no
want,
to
but
violence and the garbage that is in our
lives
schools.
over trivial
Thank you.
things.
I agree
Not worth it.
with things said about the banning and censorship. I think it's unfortunate that
probably
those
received
terms
a call
are
at
being used.
midnight.
I think they are
When will the creeps
polarizing
meet?
the issue,
She didn't get it.
Yeah, as she's
About the
wearing
threat.
it.
somewhat intimidating.
As she's wearing an
And they're
advertising.
sidetracking from the issue, which has been stated that it is, we're looking at the media guidelines and selecting the best
But yeah, Goosebumps.
shelf space for our children.
I just imagine you like
and
there
what
in the
is the
courtroom,
best?
Nick, with like
There are a
your
lot of
feet up
books
on
that
the
are
desk,
not
with
there for
Goosebumps
different
skeleton,
reasons. They have not been banned
bottom
or
feet,
censored.
like,
I think we all know that. So I guess I'm not happy with the banning and censoring focus on this. I equate this
So they
with
say they don't like
kind of a
the
story.
focus on banning, but
I
that's
think
what
in my
they're
mind of a
trying to
school
do.
nutritionist who has a problem with kids who will
Oh,
not
yeah,
eat
listen to
anything
this.
on the menu, no matter what. They're not interested. But suddenly they're very happy with the junk food and candy thing that they've just installed. And they open the doors to the cafeteria and they run to the junk food and candy because they don't like anything else. And everyone says, wonderful, they're eating, let them eat this. That's our goal. Of course, that's ridiculous. That does not happen. A school nutritionist would know that it is their job to provide the nutrition. Also, more importantly, that
He says a
candy
lot.
and junk food can be
It kind
found
of pisses me
a
off.
lot of other places outside of school for parents who want to indulge in lots of candy and junk food.
No,
or
she's
for
got
those
the
who don't want
you know
it at
she's
all.
got a Karen haircut.
The school is an institution that should be just as concerned about the nutritional value for the
You know, the kid to
children's
the left
minds
is playing a
as they
Game
are
Boy
for
right now,
nutritional
100%.
value
Oh,
for their
definitely.
tummies.
Kids are
And,
probably
I mean, this is
I guess
1997.
we look to the institution to make those choices, to say we have this line, we're giving the nutrition, all the other stuff is available
You know,
outside our walls.
I wish
and
we
that is
would
up to
have
the
made this a
parents.
game. We should have took a shot
parents'
every time she said
responsibility.
I'd be dead
100%
within the
it's my
first,
responsibility
minute.
for my children to not
funny
read the
you say
books
that,
if
Tyler.
that's our
I'm
family's
surprised
choice.
there was never a
That would
Goosebumps
also
Game
go
Boy
along the
game.
way. That is every parent's responsibility if they want
That's
their
crazy.
children to do that.
Yeah, it
That
is.
in the home.
I mean, we gotta
The
see
school
that's
is a
game.
separate issue, and I think
Like
they
the
should
Game
be,
Boy game version of like
they
the
should
Escape
be
from Harlan
they
game.
should be
We've
concerned
got
with
Michael
what their
Jackson,
educational
Walker
values are.
for
I would just say, what would the nutritional content of this be?
Yeah.
If we had
Wait, listen,
nutritional
listen.
information on the back of this, would that
That's the one that
be
traumatized
something that we
my
would be
brothers
feeding our
younger.
children if it was listed on there? Thank you.
If we had nutritional information on the back of a Goosebumps book.
If it was there,
Yeah, I wanted to bring attention just quick to what she had said. She basically said, what if we had imagine if we had nutritional information on the back of books. That is not the same. She's equating eating junk food to reading Goosebumps books. Those are not the same things.
yeah, dude, lady, you're wearing a Pepsi fucking shirt, dude. Like, get out of here, man. We're talking about nutrition.
It's just such a weird argument to make. Is like it's just like eating junk food.
Eating a Butterfinger because of Bart while reading a Goosebumps book.
Yeah, like
drinking a Pepsi because of this bitch.
Slappy. It's like Slappy will encourage your children to eat vegetables.
Her teacher, Mrs. Yeager, sent a letter from school that she did not allow the reading of any R.L. Stein books in her class or for class assignments because of their content. She said
Good thing Zach wasn't here. He probably would have ripped that Pepsi shirt right off.
But she did not recommend them.
Stole it.
It was at this time that I read a Goosebump book and agreed with her opinion. I also read a Fear Street book. This is the next reading
I
novel of the
did.
R.L.
It's a
Stein
Christian
books.
school.
These display outright violent acts with no remorse. Is this what the kids will read after they grow out of the Goosebump phase? I think we can
I'd be more offended by the name of their school than Goosebumps
Everything
books.
we feed ourselves, whether it is food or information,
I mean,
does
it
affect
definitely
us.
fits.
If we want healthy bodies, then we eat healthy foods. If we want healthy minds, then it makes sense that we would feed
Why do they
ourselves
keep
with healthy
relating
viewing
food to
and reading
Goosebumps?
materials.
Don't
This is
know.
what we
I
should
was
be
wondering
teaching our
that
children.
too.
We should be
What is that
filling
kid
them up
doing
with
in the back
materials
in
that are
my
good,
shirt? What is
that
he
set good examples, that teach
Oh,
good
they're in
lessons,
all
and that promote good
Minnesota.
values. As a school district, we have come up with some
What is he
basic
doing?
values that we
Is he like
believe
doing a
in.
sculpture or
They include
something?
respect, responsibility, compassion, integrity, and appreciation of diversity.
Oh, no, he's got a
We'll be
drink.
using these to guide and
That-
teach our children
that's Serge.
values in and out of the classroom, including the district's reading
They
program.
heard you and removed the
materials we should be
stupid
encouraging
label
our
down there
children to
for
read
long
strong,
enough so you could see what it
teaching and
was.
promoting violence,
Can of
disrespect,
Surge,
prejudice, or
something.
evil.
It looks
Some
green.
would
It
call
says
this
red.
censorship, but you can attach any
That's
name
what
you
I
want
thought.
to it, and it won't change
It
the
looked like a
truth.
can of Surge.
Withholding things that we deem as bad is nothing other than love. How can we allow our children to
He's like,
view,
"Give me a
listen,
sip."
or read materials that are violent or against our morals?
How can we
and
allow
to understand when we discipline them.
I love how they
when
have to like
display these
just read
qualities.
what they wrote,
I
that
believe
they
most
just
of us
can't
would agree
speak
that there is too
from their
much
heart
violence in the world
about
and
this
not enough
because
respect.
they don't
And
know
this is
what to
our
say
part
about
of
it
the school district by
otherwise.
encouraging
Look at the
children
boys in the
and
back.
students
They
to
don't
read
give
what
a
is deemed as
flying F.
literature.
Nope, no,
Let us
Dude,
fill our
none of
school
these
libraries
kids do.
with
Even that guy in the
literature
far back
that
on the
agrees
right
with the district's
with his
core
arms
values
up on
and
his
not
head, he's like,
accept
God, I
others.
wish this
Even
bitch would just
donated,
shut up.
that
You know,
don't
it's
give
funny,
up,
they probably
live
have
up
a
to our
Goosebumps
high
here.
standards. Thank you for giving me a
This
chance
right
to
there.
say my views.
Dear committee, I am also in favor of
Just
pulling the
know that these
Goosebumps
kids
books
will
off
have
the shelves.
Goosebumps
Hold
books.
on, wait.
I think people that defend these books on the basis of censorship and the idea that at least it gets my kids to read, or my children really like to read them, that's okay. Is a real cop-out for not taking responsibility for the future of our children and their education. These books are written as
That's right, Gregory.
literature. Our district banners itself as a district with tradition of excellence. These books are far from excellent literature. They are mediocre at best. We need to uphold the tradition of excellence.
Sounds like he needs to
continue
read.
be involved.
Sounds like he needs to read some
Hey, Junior!
Is your child, if your child said tomorrow, all they ever wanted to eat is fast food burgers, I would venture that you would tell them not to eat a lot of that kind of food because it's not good for them. We need to help them eat right in their formative years, right? This seems to hold true to the kind of food that parents put into their minds. I'm also concerned that there are so many children that like these books for the pure shock effect through the horror and gore. I truly believe that it desensitizes them in real life. These children are still very tender in their formative years, in which they are still developing their personalities, attitudes, beliefs, and prejudices.
Get the pedo off the stage.
There's definitely an influence
Get Dahmer
and effect
get Dahmer
that
out of
violence
here.
in media
Get out
has
here,
on us
Dahmer.
all. We try to influence nonviolence on our children, yet we allow books that glorify violence and gore and somehow becomes appealing to our children. Elementary school age children are not mature enough to make the decisions on what is good or bad for them to read. They need the guidance of their schools as well as their parents. I challenge the district to continue the tradition of excellence in our education. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Stahl, and I'm from Johnson School, 5th grade. And
got his daughter
yes, I am
brainwashed.
against Goosebumps books. The parents who want Goosebumps in their libraries, they can just go out to stores or public libraries and
I'm
check
more
them
than
out
certain
or
that
buy
her
'em.
dad put her up for this.
Oh, 100%.
I just
He would not
think
have been
that
our friend.
it's not right for some kids to read them because
No,
they get
that nerd would
they
have got
get
beat up.
scared or they start thinking
cut her hair.
bad things and doing them.
Oh my God.
Thank you for your time.
I teach grade 4 at Andover Elementary. I've been a teacher in the district
grade
for
4.
a long time, 19 years.
I was in a band 5 years
From
ago.
the get-go, I've always
Didn't
had a
work out.
problem with the Goosebumps books being in on our library shelves.
You know this guy got this
I've
is like
been around
his
for a
moment
while,
of
and I
fucking
recollect
fame
when
right here.
Garbage Pail Kids came out like about 10 years ago, and kids would bring those cards to school, and they thrived a
Yes, it was
great deal
bringing
on
up Garbage
shock
Pail
and
Kids.
all kinds of. They were quite shocking and quite morbid. When I saw the covers of the Goosebump books, it reminded me of the Garbage Pail Kids cards.
Oh,
Kids
so you
were
don't like them either,
obviously
huh?
allowed to bring
You're
those.
gonna make a compilation for Tim.
At the school that I taught at, Evergreen Park,
I'm
they were
telling
allowed
ya,
to bring
he
those
would love
cards
it.
to school.
Yeah.
If you would have told me 10 years ago,
I'm gonna look this guy up right now.
let's just say that Garbage Pail producers
find
would have come up with a book series If you would have told me that a school district would have endorsed those by having them on the library shelf, I wouldn't have believed it. And I guess that, there's been some excellent points made by the people who are in favor of the ban.
Actually,
one of the things I guess that has been in the forefront of our district has been the anti-violence theme.
He was definitely
kind of shocks and amazes me is the fact that Halloween costumes.
Take it back, Seabass.
I even dare say
we're really not making a good case against that Goosebumps books don't incite violence because they're just like
that's in any way, shape, or form.
I'm gonna beat you up, nerd.
For instance, a Freddy Krueger
Somebody knock that fool over.
That's been out for a long time.
It's all in good jest, though. It's all in good jest.
Hold on. We at our school have a policy that says that we can't show anything but a G-rated movie. And I guess the other thing, too, is the district's push for character education. The two just don't mesh. And I guess that I just want to say that we can't make choices for parents, and I realize that, and I'm not telling people how to parent. But I do think that if they see a lot of redeeming quality in these books, which I don't, that we as a school district should not buy into that. And that's all I have to say.
I don't think they should ban books.
Okay, so that was all the arguments made in favor of the ban. Everything from here on out is against the idea of the ban. And we're starting off with the kids' testimonies, which personally I feel is the most important aspect of this all. So let's go ahead from here.
I don't think they should ban
if it's anything we've learned that we don't listen to kids. And kids are stupid and don't know what they want in life, what they need.
The kids don't know what they want. They should be protected at all.
Yeah, they don't know what they like. They don't know what they like. Come on now.
From the libraries because because they're not scary to me, and if other kids think they're scary, I don't think they should read them. And I don't think people should lose. I don't think all kids should lose the right to read the Goosebumps books because and they should, if their parents don't want them reading them, just don't let them read them. And they encourage kids to read. And I don't think their parents let them watching TV all the time or playing Nintendo. And if you don't want your kids reading them, then just tell them not to pick them up at the library or not buy them.
Yeah, it's a good thing we didn't take a shot every time you heard them.
Okay, I'm Heather Kusky, and I think it wouldn't be fair if the Goosebump books would be banned, because if kids are discussing what they read in a book instead of what they saw on TV, it'd be more educational, and later on they would read more books. And if they're at school and they're reading more books instead of thinking what they're going to watch on TV that night, it would be better.
Goosebumps books should not be pulled in. They increase my reading skills, good entertainment. If somebody can't handle
this kid definitely needs Goosebumps.
They should not read it, but don't wreck it for me. Thank you.
Hi,
don't wreck it, baby. Don't wreck it.
School in Blaine. When I was in 4th, 5th, and part of 6th grade, I read Goosebumps. I enjoyed them, and now I read.
It's funny to me they give these adults like 20,000 minutes a piece. It feels like.
The first Goosebumps book I read, I thought it was just okay.
Most of these kids are at the point where they can write huge
I thought they were fun to read, and I started buying them. I don't have any younger siblings.
That, or they're just like that kid back there, just staying awake by drinking Surge.
I know they enjoy reading them, and
you guys want to know something cool that happens when you read Goosebumps books?
What's that?
Cheerios sponsors you and puts your name on the back of one of their boxes. I just got sent it. My wife just sent it to me. Off topic, but that's what happens.
Yeah,
we can get to read Goosebumps. Okay,
you get to be on freaking cereal box.
That's what matters.
Before they discovered them also. A lot of younger kids check them out at libraries and classrooms. And if you took them out of the schools, a lot of kids don't have much money to spend or access to a library, so they couldn't read them at all.
Now. We're hearing from our friends.
If you or your child dislike these books, you should contact your child's teacher.
You can fuck off.
But other students enjoy them, so they should be able to read them. If you take these books out of the schools, they can still turn on the TV every Friday and watch the TV show. So if they can watch Goosebumps on TV, I don't see anything wrong with reading them. Also, reading is better and healthier for you. And you as parents can control what they watch on TV, so you can control what they read. In my opinion, I think they should keep Goosebumps books in schools.
Damn.
As a student, I'm required to read a certain amount of literature. When I was younger, I highly enjoyed and recommended Goosebumps. Before I started to read Goosebumps, I had trouble comprehending what I read. I'm sure if you look at statistics, many other children started off reading the same way I did. After I outgrew Goosebumps, my level of interest in books was rather high. I expanded my selection of books from just Goosebumps to other intellectually stimulating novels. I really believe that the parents of certain children should have the power to control what their children reads, not everyone else's. This subject of interest is rather intriguing to some people, but not to others. They might think it's a waste of time. I personally think it's silly to think of taking children's literature away when you encourage them to read.
A lot of kids read Goosebumps, and if you take them away because somebody doesn't like them, it is no fair because people like them. And if you don't like them, then don't check them out. Because you'll spoil it forever if you take them away.
I think
that they shouldn't ban Goosebumps books because if kids don't like them or think they're scary, they shouldn't be reading them. Because if they get scared and ban them, all the other kids that like Goosebumps won't be able to read them.
saying that's Zach.
I think you shouldn't give away the Goosebumps books because then it wouldn't be any fun to read them anymore, and more people like them than one person has to spoil it.
I wonder if any of these kids ever look back on this video like, I was there defending Goosebumps, or
they were famous.
Yeah, like I was famous for a little bit.
Like, bro, this kid can't even see over the booth.
Hi, my name is Mark Rosine. My 4th grade class thought it would be interesting to take a vote on the Goosebumps issue. I made up a survey which asked families to decide whether Goosebumps should be kept in school libraries. Out of 23 families surveyed, 21 families voted to keep Goosebumps in the school libraries, and 2 wanted Goosebumps to be banned. Based on this survey, it seems to me that Goosebumps books are not so
Look at this
scary
kid doing his own research, man.
I
love that.
Birdie rules.
Yeah, dude. But later, she's like, yeah, he's got a point.
When I was in 4th and 5th
He looks
grade,
like a
my
90s
teachers
goth.
named us to read.
That's a girl.
Now they want to take the books away from us that we enjoy reading.
Look at that, dude. Look at that old
I
school
don't think that that's fair too, because
like the old Looney Tunes with
the Betty Boop right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's Betty Boop.
Thank you.
Yep.
Boop boop ba-doop.
Yeah, she's so cool. Look at her. She went,
I just
that's
have to
it.
say that I am for the Goosebumps staying in the schools. And if you've ever read the books, you know that they aren't really that scary. And I guess that the whole thing is about the covers, but they really
I
aren't
would be
that
curious
scary
if any of
because,
these kids who are in here are going to be
aren't kind of scary, but
Here we go. The covers. Anytime they mention covers.
that doesn't really have a
that
scary
down.
cover. Some books just don't have scary covers. And the media generalist at Mississippi Elementary says that it doesn't really matter if you read classics or books like Goosebumps, like either kind of books. They help your speed at reading and your fluency. Thank you. Goosebumps books should not be pulled from the libraries. I don't see anything wrong with them. They're not very scary, just full of suspense.
It was like 2 kids that were
Kids should
against
be able to
Goosebumps,
read
and
Goosebumps
every
if they
other
want
kid
to.
is like for it.
If their parents don't like it, they shouldn't let their kids read them. But they
You know, they're
shouldn't
sitting in like those ladies are sitting in like the corner of a room. There's like 5 of them.
If we don't want to,
Holding up their
books, we
crosses
won't.
going.
I mean, it's not like the librarians are forcing us to read them. But if we do, we should have the right.
All
In the
these
American
Karens before
Constitution,
Karen
it
was a
says that
thing.
Americans have a right to freedom of press. In other words, that the American people are free to print and read what they choose, as long as it is in the age limit.
Also, in 1791, totally free press was urged by Thomas Jefferson, who also said, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press."
Well, she's going to Harvard.
Without being mocked.
Yeah.
All the 10, 11, and 12-year-olds mainly read these books, and they know that it is just make-believe. And to us, it is not frightening nor scary.
Pass the laws.
I give signatures to all the people who totally agree with me.
I don't think Goosebumps should be taken out of the libraries.
Yeah, they got like a tally
It's as if
list
your
right
parents
there.
won't let you read what they want, but they let you watch TV. It's just worse. The TV
You wear
shows have
pajamas?
swearing and violence, and the books don't. They just have some suspenseful parts to it. But come on, what do you really want your kids to be doing when they're bored? Watching TV shows with swearing and violence, or reading what they want? I think reading is better. It helps exercise your mind, and it also gets you to read more and have better interest in books. While the TV teaches you to use bad language and violence. Goosebumps are not scary. They just have some suspenseful parts.
Not
If you
relating
take
to
Goosebumps out
food.
of the library, it won't even be worth going to. If the mother thinks they are too scary for her child, it doesn't mean we can't read what we want. Thank you for listening.
Isn't that
to my
funny? Like,
opinions and
none of the
thoughts.
kids have correlated food with Goosebumps.
Yeah. I think that Goosebumps are not.
Clearly, they don't know what they're talking about if they're not making that connection.
This school district sucks
One of my
ass.
friends, she was scared to walk down the block. She was scared to go in her basement. I think it was because of reading Goosebumps. I think it's just dealing with evil.
I remember her name.
And that, I don't think it's
What,
very
Ron's
good treated.
psycho
There's
girlfriend?
something that is-
Dude, look at her roll her eyes.
Thank you. Lavender Brown.
Roll her
Goosebumps
eyes.
books are not at all
Oh, he's got the real 90s
or
cut.
scary.
Yeah, kid, give me.
He's
Got the furlong.
Oh, he's got the
furlong cut.
Kids should be able to read for enjoyment just like
He's got the Jonathan Taylor Thomas haircut going on.
is appropriate. These books are not written for first grade
School time.
or adults. When you're trying,
I think they cut his mic.
remember they're written.
Yeah, this kid definitely reads Goosebumps.
When kids,
Come on. You got it. Come on, you got it, kid.
Kids should be the first to decide if they're going
There
to
you go.
read these books. They know what they like and what entertains them. They know if they like these books or if they're too scary for them. Think about your favorite book.
February 8th of 97.
When you were a kid. What is it? It probably wasn't educational. If not, try to think about somebody trying to ban them from school libraries.
Yeah. I really pulled out what kind of books were you reading when you were younger?
Please don't ban them.
My name is Colin Flugel, and I go to Steinberg Middle School, and for 3rd through 5th grade, I started reading the Goosebumps books, and then I started reading more Gary Paulson books, and now I'm up in Jules Verne, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and so I say that we should keep them.
Hi, my name is Kate, and I think the Goosebumps books should stay because my sister, my brother, and me and my grandma like to read it when she comes out.
She's just up there. I love my mom. I love my dad.
Just a baby.
I think Goosebumps
Yeah, just to be there.
should be left alone and leave them on the shelves in our school libraries. And I like to read them, and I'm in the process of reading one, and I don't think it's that scary. And if kids don't want to read it, then they don't have to. If they do, then it's their choice. Kids aren't forced to read them. They just choose to read them. If their parents won't let them, well, then that's their choice.
Sorry,
My friends all agree that they should be
I just
left
imagine if
on
there
the
was like
shelf.
an Australian
They
version
have
of this
read
kind
at
of
least
thing.
one of the books.
Books. I reckon there was. It's surely there was something similar here at school. They're like, gotta ban the fucking Goosebumps books, mate. They're just atrocious.
But I like them very much. And I'm a very nice
There would have been a fuck every 2 seconds.
Oh yeah.
books.
Do you follow Luke Cook at all?
I've read at least 25 of our
Funny, dude, he's so funny.
books, and I have at least 40 of them. My friends and I all agree that they should be kept in the schools, even if one parent doesn't
Yes, you
agree that
should.
his or her child should be
rich
allowed to read them. That is
Yeah.
their choice, and it shouldn't. That
You did all the
privilege of reading
mail-ins.
the book shouldn't be taken away from others.
Hi, my name is Ashley Kirchner. I'm from Jonesville Elementary. I myself don't care for Goosebumps books.
but I don't think it's right to ban the books from our media center.
Look at that.
It is my choice and my parents as to what I read or don't
That's
read.
the appropriate
This is a free
scenario for
country, and I
against
think
them.
we should be
Like, I
able to
don't
make
like
our
them, but God, don't give them away.
That's maturity right there.
My name is Travis Korn, and I have 43 of the Goosebumps books, and I've been reading them since the 3rd grade, and they aren't scary. Students at Johnsville School need a note from parents
You're
annually.
like flexing your book.
In an article in the newspaper, it said that teenagers
I got 43
would get scared. The
books.
majority of teenagers
Guys, we're
do
about
not
to see
read,
Isaiah up there.
and the ones that do would not read Goosebumps. I think children should get the freedom to read them.
First of all, I'd like to compliment all of the
Okay,
students.
so just going to pause here for just a sec to catch our breath. So, of course,
This
as
is
I
hard.
said, that was those were the children's testimonies in favor of keeping the books. Now we're moving on to the parents who are in favor of keeping the books. So
Look
here,
at that firm, dude.
That they had the courage to come forth and talk about something that they believe in. That takes a lot of courage for them to do that. My name is Sharon Kusky. My daughter Heather was up here earlier. She's been reading the Goosebumps series since 3rd grade, and now she's in middle school and is still reading those books and has moved on to the more advanced series, Fear Street. In my opinion, there's a much more disturbing issue here than whether or not to remove the Goosebump books from the Anoka Hennepin School libraries. It concerns rights and freedom. If you were to recommend removal of these books, I feel it would have very serious repercussions. Which book would be the next one banned, and which would be the next one after that, and so on. The small group of parents supporting this ban the book movement need to be reminded that it is their parental responsibility to censor what their children listen to, watch, and read, and not their right to decide what is appropriate or acceptable for my children or any other children in the school district. I've read a few of the Goosebump books myself and found them to be very entertaining, and I consider R.L. Stine to be a very creative author. The children in this district need to be allowed the opportunity to enjoy these books, and their parents need to be given the respect and the freedom to make decisions that are appropriate for their own families. Before you decide whether or not to fire up the furnace and ban these books, please remember the real issue that lies below the surface, and that being freedom. And the last comment I'd like to make regarding one that a student made.
Yes, freedom.
Go, a child shall lead them. And one of these students came forward and brought up the constitutional rights that we have. And I'd like for you to remember that when you make your decision, and remind the other parents in the room that are behind this movement that we are talking about constitutional rights here. Thank you.
Mother of the Year.
Goosebumps has increased my child's reading ability. The 4th graders have a squirt time as well as a reading time at home. My son has put in 1 hour every night for the past 3 months or so since school has started with a reading program, just reading the R.L. Stine books. I feel if you pull these R.L. Stine books from the media center, the kids will not have that well of a reading or squirt time. They will choose other activities. And I just think that if somebody can't handle the books, then they ought to be the ones to pull back. They ought to say, I can't handle it, I don't want to read it. They are not being made to read these books. Our son enjoys them, and he's gotten the kindergartner involved in just reading them to him. I've had no problems at home with the books. Thank you.
If the Goosebumps are removed from the library shelves because they're scary, will authors like Edgar Allan Poe be far behind? He would be amazed to learn that his, quote, "The Raven Nevermore" was a prophecy of his own work. Those who would remove Goosebumps deny that their action is censorship, but to paraphrase William Shakespeare, is skunk by any other name would smell as foul. The real scare in this controversy is that we have teachers who can listen to children and parents give convincing testimony to the merits of these stories and ignore it in favor of their own views.
Sounds like he's about to cry.
An author who can change the hearts and minds of non-readers into
I'd be
voracious
crying
readers.
because I'd be so
These
obviously
and more
defending.
worthwhile
I'd be
writers
like,
should be honored.
Or he's got like a computer
The use
voice.
of Goosebumps as an
Sounds like
exciting
RFK.
educational tool should be encouraged.
You never know when this
We
might
have teachers who denounce reading as lacking in educational value.
Then Zena would be
Gives
like,
me goosebumps.
books are too much.
My name is Shirley Emmert. I'm the media generalist at Sand Creek Elementary in Coon Rapids and University Avenue Elementary in Blaine. I would not like to see these books banned from our media centers. As a media generalist, it is my responsibility to see that there is a free flow of information and choices for our students and our staff to use in teaching. And at the same time, I recognize the parental right to make these choices for their own children. If we would look at the work skills that were required in the job market as we began this century and compare those to the skills that will be required as we enter this next century, reading has become more important than ever. And if the Goosebumps books are a tool to grab some of our students and help them discover the joy of reading, then I certainly think that that opportunity should be kept for them. I have noticed that the interest in the Goosebump books is beginning to decline in my media centers. There are now a few copies on the shelves as the students come into the media center. So I think that as with many pieces of literature, this will cycle and there'll be another book or series that comes along that will grab the interest of our students. I also have been very pleased to hear our young people
foreshadowing a wizard.
This whole process is a very good demonstration of democracy in action, and I'm happy that we have this process in place and we can carry it through to make a final decision. Thank you.
My name is Bill Garrison. My daughter goes to Franklin. I'm unable to read to her for the simple fact that I'm a single parent and I had no time to read for her. So with these Goosebumps collection that I have here, which I have not seen one tonight, encourage her to read, and if they're taken out the shelves, then I'm afraid she's going to lose interest to read and going to end up like me without a decent job because of no education. As long as she wants to read these books, I encourage her, and I feel that the books should be left where they are for the kids' choice, not for the parents to make up. If the kids choose to read them, more power to them. If the parents don't choose to have them in the home, more power to them.
Like she's got a copy of Camp Nightmare there. Good choice.
Thank you.
My name is Joe Thomas. I would have thought that this meeting should never have taken place, but obviously most people don't agree. Or
look at that shirt, baby.
I was going to say the same thing. Looking to rock Winnie the Pooh.
Books in the library.
Yeah.
There should never be a discussion about removing anything from somebody's choice. There's really two issues I want to talk to tonight. One that I have not seen is the issue of some type of control. I have a third grader in Johnsville who, while in first grade, came home very upset. He is an advanced reader and was not allowed to choose chapter books from the library. That was inappropriate for his age group. It took my wife calling both Mr. Murray and talking to the media coordinator before he was allowed to go what was beyond the approved or accepted level for his grades. The other issue is that as a student, I was very proud of what my parents taught me about not judging others and taking responsibility for myself. It was not somebody else's job to do that. As a parent, I've always adopted that and thought that you know best what was good for your students. If that's incorrect, if that's a wrong assumption, I'd certainly like to know, because I've only got about 18 more years before my students graduate, and I don't think in that time I can unlearn what you have taught your children and teach them what I think is right. Please keep these books. Thank you.
I wasn't really sure what I was going to say tonight. The children pretty much said it. It boils down to freedom of choice. The book is a fantasy. If the kids can't discern it's a fantasy, the parents aren't doing their job in letting them know that that's all it is a fantasy. We watch TV, we see things that aren't real. These books are great learning. I read my first one tonight here. It's fun. They're fun. They're easy to read. They teach kids reading skills, and to take them off the shelves would be wrong. And we go back, the kids said it so well with freedom of choice. It's the choice of the parents and the kid, not of somebody else to make for them.
Hi, my name is Sherry Scarborough. I'd like to congratulate the children that have participated here tonight to express their own opinions and to make their own choices. We do encourage our children to read. We encourage our children to make their own informed choices. We cannot teach preference. What materials we each choose to enjoy is an inherent individual freedom. Certainly we have to concern ourselves with the welfare of our children. I prefer that the children be taught to choose for themselves what is appropriate. I don't want young adults coming to me at 18, 19, 20 years old and saying, limit my choices so I can make a decision, Mom. They need to be prepared by then. And I think we have an obligation as parents and educators to teach children right from wrong, to teach children a sense of responsibility, particularly to themselves. We need to teach them by what we have as our own home cultures and our own personal mores, and use those things to influence our children's choices and help them to understand what's right for them. Children, by limiting their choices, we're doing them the disservice by not preparing them to make choices in the adult world.
Bingo.
Reading the books on the shelf allows the children the freedom of opportunity of choice. I'm in favor of either leaving the books on the shelf, letting the children choose what to read, what not to read, or leaving the books on the shelf and requiring some kind of denial slip. If a parent doesn't want their child exposed to certain material, they can certainly notify the school. I think that would be the lesser of two evils. Rather than a permission slip, use an elimination. Someone mentioned R.L. Stine being a fad. I don't know if he's so much a fad or if he just can't write fast enough to keep up with the readers. My kids have just about read everything he's written in one form or another. I appreciate your time and thank you for your concern over this issue.
As a single mom, I like to be involved with what my kids read or do. I feel that some of the books are appropriate for my children. I have 3 children, ages 10, 10 and 8.
20.
I have read some of the books, and I don't feel that the books are scary. In fact, I'm glad that my children have found something that can hold their interest in reading. I have fought with 2 of my daughters to find anything that will hold their interest to read. My oldest daughter had the hardest time with reading because she could not comprehend even the most simplest words.
Age could be.
It took her over 2 years in school
early 20s.
before it started making sense to her. But
not to have elementary school kids.
I know she and my other children would not be reading much as they do.
She could if she had them like when she was 16.
And also the principal in Sand Creek Elementary stressed that the children read as much as possible. If this book is banned from the libraries, I and my children feel that the book that is read by many children will be
that's
lost.
A different meeting.
This is
okay.
in the interest of the children
she has
and
to
should be left
attend.
in the library.
This is about Goosebumps
Many
books.
families cannot afford to buy books in the stores and do not have time to check them out in the library, in the public libraries. So therefore, I feel that they should be left in the school libraries. Thank you.
One of the first benefits I noticed as a parent from Goosebumps was the quiet trip I had to Minneapolis.
So it's like Roz from Monsters, Inc.
Sat in the back seat fighting, we were sitting and reading, and it was really enjoyable. And this is the point of why I want to see the Goosebumps.
Always watching you, Wazowski.
As I told many parents, I was
Always
in these meetings tonight. I heard from them. If it weren't for the Goosebump books, my children wouldn't be reading.
No kids, no
when
kids.
they first hit the school library shelves, or as I was working in our school library helping catalog some books, I talked to the librarian in charge and said, "What's your feeling on these books?" Because I like professionals and I respect their opinions on something. And she said, "The important thing about these books is that the children are reading them." When I first read in the paper that these books could possibly be banned, I was appalled because banning books goes against everything that I hold dear. And as I've sat here tonight, I'm not as appalled by the initiation of the action because it's been a valuable learning tool for our children. I took 4 kids from our church tonight, and as I was telling our youth director of our choir that I was taking these children out, it wasn't, "Oh no, we're not going to have kids at practice, it's good. Let them have their say," and our children have had their say tonight. What I ask is that you listen to what was important to them, that the children who came home like my daughter and said, "Mom, I want to go speak at that hearing." It meant enough to them to get up and talk in front of a room full of adults to say how important these books were, and I ask you to take that into consideration.
Looking for the kids that should be wearing like
Hi, I'm Kate Wright.
Jinko jeans.
I am the mother of 4 children.
Slipknot shirts.
And they all love the Goosebumps books, and I really wasn't concerned until I saw it on the news that it was an issue as to whether they were good or bad. I challenged my husband, and both of us sat down and read one, front to back. And neither of us saw a reason for the concern.
What are they?
They weren't scary in a book form. A book is something that you choose to pick up, you choose to open, and you can choose to put it down.
Was it Gooey Worms? I feel bad for whoever had to read that one.
If it were in a movie version, then I would be a little concerned because they're a little graphic, but everybody's imagination imagines things differently. When you hear the words, a monster with yellow bulging eyes, every single one of you, every single person in this room gets a different picture in their mind. If a child gets something so scary that he can't handle it, then definitely that parent's responsibility to guide that child through what they should or should not be allowed to handle is their responsibility. It's not their responsibility to tell me what my children is allowed to read.
Little monster with bulging yellow eyes.
Everybody accepted that responsibility when they decided to have children. That you take care of your own children and let me take care of mine. My husband also ran into a display at the library that had a whole list of award-winning books. These were books that were given awards. The titles: Shape Changer, Summer of the Bone Pile Monster, Alien Secrets, Deer Stand, Red Dirt Jessie, Red Cat, The Summer I Shrank My Grandmother, Devil's Arithmetic. Now these are award-winning books. I haven't read them, but I think if we're going to ban on covers and scary things, that these need to be considered as well. Just fall in line and get rid of everything that stimulates imagination, and we'll see what kind of children we really do raise.
Damn.
Hi, I've been a parent reading volunteer up at Milton Middle School for 6 years now. I work mainly with reluctant readers who have real problems with comprehension.
That's the thing.
One
is
of the
that,
reasons they have this problem
parents who
with
are against the
comprehension is they can't make
ban are not
pictures in their
very
minds. They can't. They read something and they can't make it into a movie or can't see the picture. One of the things that the Goosebumps books have done for these children has made them see
real
pictures.
one-liners in there.
And most of the kids I work with,
got some zingers.
they read them for a short period of time and they move on. Some of the classics are very graphic.
Maybe it's February.
And show
take off the Christmas
even
sweater.
Things are even, I'd say, right along the lines of some of the stuff that R.L. Stein puts into his books. But those books are okay because they're classics.
I say that as I wear Halloween stuff year-round.
Pardon me, when I was in school, which was a long
So
time
I guess
ago.
I have no.
I really think
No
that
leg
the
to stand on
students, if
here.
the students can't handle it, it's the parents' responsibility to say, no, you're not going to read that. And if
you're not.
They pull them from the shelves in the libraries, you're going to see a
Put it
lot
down,
of kids
Meg.
stop reading. Granted, they should be only
Put it
up
down.
there just to keep the students reading, but it does promote
Look at that
reading
sweater,
habits
bro.
and good reading habits, that the children do move on to other books, and lots of times in a very short period of time. I think it would be a real shame if
He
they
does
do
a
decide to
Goodwill
pull the books
every day.
because they are doing
Snowflake
good.
titties.
Thank you.
Okay, that
I
is
hope
quite
to read a
an-
Goosebump book before tonight, so I have some idea about the content. Unfortunately, I did not, but my observations really don't require me to have read the book. My son Travis spoke earlier this evening.
But
he's a fifth grader at Johnsville. He's read 43 books since third grade of Goosebumps. And Travis reads a lot of books besides Goosebumps. In third grade, of my three sons, Travis was the most passive. Now in fifth grade, he is the most passive. I think with our kids, the essential groundwork has been laid by this time. And I don't think these books are going to turn them into mean, violent kids. I think another issue is that we're not talking about required reading. We're talking about books in the library, and whether a kid reads it or not is purely up at his or her discretion. I think we need to give our kids some credit for understanding that these books are fiction. You know, kids are sharp. My last concern is that this began with one parent's concern or alarm, and while I respect that parent's point of view, from how this has escalated, we could set a dangerous precedent if these books are pulled off the shelf, whereby any parent who is upset by anything is going to make an issue of it. And it could be opening a Pandora's box of all kinds of problems.
First of all, I would like to say that I'm appalled that any bomb threats or other verbal acts of violence were taken against the parent who brought up this issue. I do not believe that anyone in this room supports this kind of behavior. Every parent in this room loves their children and is concerned with their morals and values.
This just shows the distinction between crazy parents and regular parents.
They may learn a new word, a new concept, increase reading fluency, and it also creates a love of reading. There are many different types of books available.
Lady and threatened
Some are very
to blow up her house and
educational, and others are meant for
clearing away
entertainment.
Goosebumps.
If one book read leads to another book read, an accomplishment has occurred. I just finished the
clearly
last
did
2
help,
books
because
and
Goosebumps
thought
is
it
still
was
here.
suspenseful and funny and entertaining.
there's something about
I can
holding
see
a
why the
Saturday
books
that's
appeal
just
to young boys especially. I recommend the books not be restricted from any media center in the Noka-Hennepin district.
Oh, never mind. It almost looked like that kid who had the surge was just like his head was down the table. He's done.
Don't have any other speakers here.
But
So I would like to
was
thank
just the way
everyone
the
for
video
coming
fuzzed.
tonight. I would also like you to know that all the committee members have read all the books in question, and we expect to meet early in February and make a decision sometime in February, or a recommendation to the superintendent. I should correct that.
Last Monday, the reevaluation committee recommended that all 9 of the challenged books be retained based on their appropriateness, usefulness, and appeal. The final decision as to whether to keep the books moves on to the school board.
Get out of here, Karen.
In your face!
Get out of here, Lemonhead.
So essentially, what ended up happening, of course, is that the 9 challenge books, as they said, that were brought up for discussion initially, were retained. They did not get restricted. They were kept in the libraries. As for the entire book series, it also ended up being decided that they would be kept in the schools. So the entire issue.
What were the books again? Say Cheese and Die.
I don't think it was the same ones that we read in that one article, but I believe one of them was Welcome to Camp Nightmare. I'm not entirely certain. If I end up,
I'll make sure just a few that we saw from this video.
It could have been any of them.
Living Dummy was held up. One of them.
It could have been any of them.
Evil thing.
But the fact of the matter is that the issue ended up getting put to bed, and it ended up being voted in favor of the Goosebumps books. So the books ended up, at least at the Anoka-Hennepin School District, were kept, and the parents who were in support of the ban did not get their wish. So, and of course, by the time...
Meanwhile, here where I lived, this wasn't even an issue. It was never brought up.
Well, I think as we saw a lot tonight, a lot of this was very much in Minnesota, and I'm willing to bet that the one parent's concern is what led to a flurry of other places in the district getting involved. But it
had to have been somewhere here. I just imagine
there most likely were many other isolated incidents of this sort of thing happening. But as far as I'm concerned, it didn't get to a widespread sort of effect, and many people probably would have never even known.
I have exorcised the demons. House has been cleared.
But with all of this said and done, and all of this stuff that we've looked at tonight, I think it's very clear that the Goosebumps books, while very popular, did have its detractors. And I feel like after a while, parents had to just kind of give in to the fact that kids are going to like these books no matter what. And there's really nothing they can do about it, so might as well just let the kids enjoy it. And we turned out great, right? But I guess to close things out, what do you guys, after seeing and hearing all that, what do you guys think of the whole situation now after the fact? Tyler, let's, of course, begin with you.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is absurd. I think, what I love about it, watching that, I think it just brings perspective of hearing, obviously, both sides, but, I think, 50 minutes long, and 5 minutes of it, 7 minutes of it was the crybaby parents, and then the other 45 was literally all the kids and the parents that were normal, and maybe you're just not parenting right, or obviously you're just out of your mind, and I think as a society as a whole, even around the world, I think it really isn't even just about anything other than common sense, right? I mean, like, if you really like read a book, like she said, that's what I loved. It's the superintendent lady was like, at the end, she's like, we read all the books in question, which is cool. Because I think if you're going to have that kind of thing, like, yeah, you definitely should. And, obviously it was like they're sitting over there giggling and laughing, almost the whole time, and it's like, to them, it's probably a little comedish. And I don't know. Whether it's Satanic Panic, GoldenEye 007, stuff like this, like, my daughter's 12 and reads Twilight. You know what I mean? Like, is it the most appropriate book for her? No, but is she mature enough? And dude, she reads 400 or 500 page books. Like, she's very comprehensive and like knows how to read, right? So if that's up her alley, and of course it's fantasy, she can distinguish a werewolf from a real person. Is she walking around, pretending to be a vampire or werewolf? No. So I guess, it's asinine, really. But anyway, well, what do you guys think?
Yeah, Nick, let's start with you, man.
I'm in the same boat. I think we said it at the beginning of this that, they even said it in that video too, which, I've never watched the whole video. I have seen parts of it. But they said it in the video too. It comes down to the parents. What do you think your kid can handle? I mean, because every kid's different. You have to look at this from an individual standpoint. I mean, there's not what's rated something for this person could be rated something totally different for the next person. Like, even that guy who was like, oh, we only rated G. Do you realize what was rated G back then compared to now? I mean, that's where you kind of, yeah, it's ridiculous. So the fact that was even said, I just was like, I wanted it so bad. If I was there, I'd have been like, dude, I can give you probably 10 things right now that's worse than a Goosebumps book that's rated G. So I don't know. It is ridiculous. It's dumb, and we still have these, stupid things today. I mean, of things they're saying are bad, and when it comes to songs or books or anything else, like, baby, it's cold outside. We got to ban that. That's rapey. But here's WAP. It's like, are you for real? Like, okay, so it is what it is. I mean, but it just, I hate that saying, but sometimes it's fitting. So, you just got to roll with it and show people it's not as bad as you think it is.
Yeah,
exactly. Just reel it out there. Crank that sucker to 11.
And Bjorn, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much what you guys said. It doesn't matter what it is, you're going to offend people, depending, whether it's a book or a movie or a song. I mean, I saw a thing just the other day that Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne is now offensive because of one line. He was a boy, she was a girl. That's offensive now.
Yeah, everything's offensive now.
It's just like, so obviously in the 90s, they saw Goosebumps as evil and satanic, but then normal people like us were like, no, my kids are reading, and that's all I wanted them to do. And now they're reading, so it's great.
Well, and
it's not like they're reading 50 Shades of Grey at that age or something. You know what I mean? Like, again, different levels that go from horror to reading to whatever. They're different levels.
Well, and Nick, you said it perfectly earlier about parenting. Like, obviously, like, we're pretty, it seems like, open-ended parents, and I think I like to let my kids experience life a little bit. Obviously there's lines and morals there, but I think I focus more as a parent, just like I felt like the 45 minutes of that was common sense. Those were common sensal parents, like they were teaching their kids common sense. And if you can't if you're so scared to teach your kid common sense and have backlash from them, then you're either overbearing or you're doing too much or you're not doing enough. And you'll know very quickly by the reaction or the consequence of that. But, every parent, there's been moments where I've made that poor judgment sometimes, like we all do. Like, but that's, even as a parent, that's how you learn, right? So if you're a parent that's completely all the time scared like that or whatever, if it's not religious, then you're clearly just an asshole. That's really what it boils down to, and I try not to judge people by all means, but Like, you know, when you start relating Goosebumps books, the ages from 8 to 11 to food, like, we got a problem, you know, like that
was weird.
Well, and clearly, I mean, a lot of those parents who were being such, you know, detractors of the series were very much judgmental of the parents who were in favor of letting their kids read it. So it's like, it's an eye for an eye. It's like, look, I'm not a parent. I don't have kids, so I'm not experienced in that kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, you don't need to be a parent to know that kids deserve the right to choose their own paths. The parents should be the one that are guiding them on the right path. But to control your kids at such a level that you bar them from things that are meant to that are meant to
Ghost Rider.
Really stimulate their imagination. I think that one parent said it best, is like, you know, the one minute you're taking away one thing, then what's next? Like, you're just gonna, if we are okay with taking away things that stimulate the imagination of children, it's just like, it's gonna be a domino effect, and you're gonna take away more and more and more things until all of a sudden everything in the world is sanitized, safe, and non-threatening. And that's not what the world is.
To add to that too, you know, growing up, I think we all experienced like Burger King kids, right? McDonald's, you know, all the fast food places. Like, you know, you actually went. I get their sanitary issues that were there back then, you know, and obviously, like with tech, it wasn't as prominent as it is today, you know. So they started taking play sets out of, you know, restaurants and all that. But just go type 80s, 90s, like Taco Bell, McDonald's. Not saying fast food's great for you or anything like that, but go look at it, and then go look at them now. Like, this generation, and I hate talking like this, but they have just completely wiped out like anything creative, anything that's different,
imaginative.
To them, what's different is something that's culturally relevant. But it's like, well, that's not, like, that's geared towards kids. That's geared towards a whole generation of kids. Like, you know, I just don't understand. It's like, you know, and then their rebuttal will always be, well, kids today are just on technology more and they don't want to go out. It's like, that's not true. I make my kids go outside all the time.
That's not something that has to be done. You can be a parent and stimulate your kids into doing things that are not technology related. Literally, it all comes back to the parents. And I feel many of these parents who were so for this ban were parents who were just like not willing to accept the responsibility that they're not doing their job as parents. Because any self-respecting parent is going to teach their kid that what is fiction and what is real, what is reality. A kid knows, most kids know that fiction books are fiction. No matter what is in a book, no matter how scary a scene is, it's not real. It's not real. You can close it at any time. You can put it away. You cannot even interact with it at all. So the fact that one parent has to make the decision for hundreds, thousands of kids is incredibly selfish. And look, again, this is not to, you know, we clown on these people, all right? But people are entitled to their own opinions. If parents don't want their kids reading a certain book or seeing a certain show, that's fine. That's their own discretion. But that is their parenting for their children, not their parenting for all children. That's not how the world works. It's not how the world should work.
Now, I will say I'm going to be very judgmental seeing 10-year-olds in a Terrifier movie. Just saying.
Yeah, no, but, and we talked about that at length too. Like, you know, there are things in the world that you as a parent have to step in and say no. But Goosebumps, a book series for children with really non-threatening morals, monsters that are scary but not, you know, gory or intense, is not threatening to a generation. And that still pertains to today. Those kids are adults now, and I can guarantee you that all of those kids still probably feel the same way. all those kids who spoke highly of Goosebumps probably still feel the same way. You go up to them, you're like, what did you think of those books? They'd be like, I love those books. I guarantee it. We're testaments to that too, because we grew up with these books and we still love them now. And it's just because they were engaging stories that stimulated our imagination. They made us want to read. They made us want to write. They made us want to explore the genre and just become more media literate. That's all there is to it. And Goosebumps, it was not the only thing that was up for public scrutiny. There were many, many things, especially in the 90s, that were under public scrutiny. But this just seemed like one that was 100% unwarranted, unnecessary, and more so just completely detrimental in every way. I can't imagine what would have happened if those parents got their way. If Goosebumps was banned, like, I could not imagine what kind of effect that would have, which is why I'm so glad that, you know.
Well, you got to figure that in that effect, it would be, if they got a ban there, then other schools will look at it like, oh, if they thought it was worth banning, maybe we should look into it. Or a parent who watches that sees that it's successful there, then they can bring that to their school board committee saying, hey, look, Minnesota banned it here. So, you know, are we not going to follow suit? You know, do we not love our children as much as Minnesota people do?
And unfortunately, those
that's how it goes.
Have not only not gone away, but honestly, I feel have been amplified, especially with social media. Those kinds of mentalities, at least here in the 90s,
oh God, yeah.
It was kept to that community. Imagine if this was happening now. There'd be hashtags and online movements, and it would be everywhere. I can guarantee you. So, but thankfully, we live in a timeline where that didn't happen, and the Goosebumps books, you know, live on, and they're remembered fondly for it. So, I guess that's the biggest takeaway from it all, is that we won. We won. But if any of you guys at home want to check out that full unedited hearing, I'll leave a link in the description for you guys to check out. You can check out the full 90-minute video. I will also leave a link to another. I will also leave a link to another.
I was trying to see what Tyler was doing.
From 1999, which was actually related to another R.L. Stine book, The Nightmare Hour. And actually, I believe R.L. Stine was actually in attendance for. So that one I feel is very interesting to watch. So I'll leave links to both those videos in the description below. So check them out. But that is going to do it for tonight's episode of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. Tyler, thank you very much for joining us again and talking some Goosebumps. It was awesome to get your input on this whole situation.
Always. I always feel part of you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. As we always say, you know, you're just one of the many people we consider part of the extended Goosebumps Crew family, so we're very glad to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll, of course, leave a link to Tyler's social medias in the description below. Check him out if you haven't already. Seriously, check him out. He's an awesome guy, deserves the support. And, of course, check out Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps, Sauce Fan, and Sean, respectively, and their social medias and their YouTubes. If you like today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on our audio platforms and social medias. All those links are in the description below, so check them out. We'll have another episode for you guys next week. But until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, and from all of us here, we want to wish you all, as always, to take care, stay safe, and have a very scary day.